Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm Ben Hansen, joined by Ben Reeves.
Hello.
And as always, but this time, Brian Shea.
As always.
Welcome to the big show, folks. Also, leader Leo Vader in the booth.
Hello, my
Welcome.
minions.
Hey, speaking of Leo Vader, guess what's coming up in the back half of this episode?
Leo's birthday?
No, something better.
Oh.
We have someone from Cappy Games called Dan Vader.
What?
That's going to be calling in. Yeah, he was the director of Grindstone, which is that Apple Arcade good game.
Leo, you didn't tell us you had a brother.
Did you ask him if he's going to name his son Darth?
Back half of the show, we have an interview all about the Apple Arcade. So we have Andrew Schimmel from the team that made Alto's Adventure. They made Skate City. He's a senior producer on that one. Also Sam Rosenthal for Where Cards Fall, which is another game on Apple Arcade.
Heard good things.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a developer roundtable talking about their experience working with Apple, being on Apple Arcade. You know, try to get to the bottom of how they're getting paid, which seems to be a big question. Cash seems to be involved in some way.
So
but
Skate City, that's the game, right?
Yes.
The fact that Alto's Arcade developer made that makes me 1,000 times more interested.
The twist is that they published it.
Oh.
Yeah, it was actually a different development
All
team.
right, well,
that
then my
actually
interest
made
is
it.
back down to 1.
No, it's solid. It's solid. So it's an interesting time to talk to indie developers that are like, oh, here's a life raft with Apple. Let's go for it. So just getting their journey and stuff like that, I think is interesting.
Are you able to buy any of those games outside of Apple Arcade?
No, you cannot.
Nope.
Well, some like on Switch or
on
Steam,
different
stuff like
system,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, but not actually in the App
Epic
Store.
Games Store.
That's true. But before we get to this hot Apple Arcade discussion, we have a lot to talk about. Pokemon Sword and Shield is our new cover story.
Yep.
Ta-da! It's not Batman. We're sorry, everybody that thought it was Batman. But we're going to talk about that trip overall. Reeves, we have Shenmue 3 to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we visited Yu Suzuki's studio. It's an adventure. Speaking of adventure, how about our Ring Fit adventure, ladies and gentlemen? I've been playing with that bizarre Switch peripheral.
That's why you're so muscular.
Oh, you could tell from
yeah.
underneath the
Oh
sweater.
my gosh. Don't flex. Don't flex.
Also, Little Town Hero, we have a couple things to say since we were at Game Freak and we learned a little bit about it almost accidentally.
A couple things.
That's right. And then, Shay, you insisted on talking about Yooka-Laylee and the impossible layer.
Yeah.
What is this?
It's a game.
Okay, it is the 2D, 2.5D
Yeah,
sequel to
it's
Yooka-Laylee?
a 2D platformer. Think like if Yooka-Laylee 1 was a love letter to Banjo-Kazooie, this is a love letter to Donkey Kong Country.
Very interesting. I love it. Let's see. Other stuff. Some mop-up. Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Reiner is playing it as we speak. He's a little iffy on it, and he's not in deep enough to come up with a review score yet, but he's going to be playing it over the weekend, so hopefully next week we'll catch up with him on that. Destiny Shadowkeep. Hey, it's out. That's exciting. People seem to be liking it. Matt Miller's playing the bejesus out of it, so he'll report back later as well. Neocab. I think that's part of Apple Arcade, isn't it? It also came out on other
Don't look at
platforms.
me.
But Kimberly Wallace reviewed that. It's like the kind of glorified text adventure, choose
Yeah.
your own path.
Seems like she liked it. I
Yeah,
read
she
a
gave it an
review.
8. Yeah, very exciting. Okay, speaking of very exciting, I don't remember what episode we aired during this. Oh, it was the episode with Jeff Cork hosting.
Yeah.
Right? And Back of the Disc Trivia. I was out that week because I was in Japan, and I was in Japan for a hell of a long time because we're out there for the Pokemon Sword and Shield cover story, and then I just stayed out there and waited for Brian Shea to leave and for Ben Reeves to come, and then we went on the Shenmue trip. But Brian Shea, Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Yep.
This was technically my second time visiting Game Freak. This was your first time.
Yes, it was.
What was your impression of walking through those doors, sir?
It was cool just knowing like the history that happened in that like series of rooms that we kind of walked through a vanilla hallway to.
Yes, they were delightfully escorted through quickly.
Yeah, but I mean, if you didn't have that sense of history and like what was going on behind the scenes of those rooms, like it would just be pretty ordinary. Like
It's a lot of Pokemon toys.
Yeah, there's a lot of Pokemon toys, which is awesome. Like the conference room we were in, like has like kind of like a museum set up on either side, where it's like just display cases, and on one side it's like all the figures of all the Pokemon, all like the mainline Pokemon entries, like from red and green all the way up to Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And then on the other side, it's like the soundtracks of those games plus like all the side games.
Right.
So
but
like
it's
a
overall,
lot.
it's just a confusing cover story visit structure because normally the way it works is you go to a studio. They usually have like a PowerPoint presentation. They'll kind of walk you through some high-level stuff. Have
Here's
a
a
director.
schedule.
Yeah, stuff like that. Then like, okay, we'll have a demo of the game here, time for questions here, video scheduled here, blah, 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 blah. But both times I've been to Game Freak, and this time in particular, since it was actually for a cover story instead of just kind of like a general feature visit, it is so bizarre and delightful, but bizarre because it's like, let's just sit you down in this conference room. Here's Masuda, who's been on the series since the beginning, and Omori, who's been there since the original Ruby and Sapphire, I believe.
Ruby Sapphire, yeah.
And now he's directing Sword and Shield. But just sitting you down with them, and it's like, what do you want to know? And it is the privilege of a lifetime to get to go to Game Freak and then just sit down. It's like, oh, I can ask about anything? All right, here's what we want to know. What did you want to know, Shay?
I wanted to know about Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Very, very shrewd. And what did you learn about that? What was the most interesting thing you learned?
The fact that the development team had to basically double in order to make this game, and like how much more difficult it is to make a console game.
Really?
This is interesting.
Double?
Yeah, so it was around 100 developers last time we were at Game Freak, which was 2017, and they say that now they're up to like 180 to 200. But then they still contract out with a lot of people. So he's like, oh, you include the localization teams, Nintendo. Like, we're talking like maybe 1,000 or so people. But within Game Freak, it's about 180 to 200 developers, which definitely is a big change. They've expanded to more floors since the last time I was there. And I'm so happy you led with that, because that's one of the most interesting things I think about the visit overall, was just trying to get a sense of why not expand bigger, which might be an insane statement. But when the games sell as well as they do, there's one of those profitable games ever made. I mean, this team could have a Destiny scope and size if it really wanted to, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's
the biggest franchise in the world, right?
It's the biggest entertainment franchise in the world.
Which is insane to think about.
Right,
But
and
also, it's everywhere.
Right, and the premier RPG mainline series, which is driving everything forward, you think they could throw a lot more behind it, so why don't they? And talking to Masuda about that is interesting. These are my notes for Shenmue. Get out of here. So Masuda was just stressing, like, hey, I would love to make games with 20 people if I could. Like, that is my ideal. Because he's just so insistent on, like, the way he put it was, when you have a bigger team, there's too many branches on that tree. Like, he wants to keep it small because communicating is so challenging on development teams. And it comes up over and over again with AAA games, right? Communication is just what sinks a lot of projects, puts them in development hell. And he's like, man, if we did to, like, explain the concept of Dynamaxing to more than 30 people, he's like, it would get so messy and complicated and just a disaster. So keeping that team as tight as possible while still being able to crank out these mainline RPG series is their mission. Now, I know the community, on the other hand, is like, all hands on deck, get the national decks in there. Like, I think the community wouldn't mind it if they ballooned, but Game Freak has such small indie roots, and Masuda is kind of the spiritual lead of that studio at this point, right? And his desire to keep things small, I think, is a fascinating, almost disconnect with maybe what the community would like.
Do you get any sense from those guys that they're exhausted from Pokemon at all, or that they're like, all right, here we go, another Pokemon, like, feels like we're doing the same thing, like, this is my life? Or are they, like, genuinely excited about
They're
this
always,
thing?
well, I mean, for the day that we're there, they can muster excitement about Pokemon. I do think it's an exciting franchise. When it's so successful, there's enough there to kind of chew on, I think, to keep things interesting. That's why they want to shake things up with every entry.
Yeah.
But the interesting part, and we'll talk about it a little bit later with Little Town Hero, is coming from Masuda, he came up with what they call, what is it? The Gear Project System, where it's a little bit Valvean. And I'll let you talk at some point, Shay. Just, I don't know when.
Valvean?
Yeah, like Valve, right? Where it's the Gear Project System within Game Freak. It's when a project is ramping down, like Pokemon Sword and Shield, or another project's just ramping up and there's some downtime, if any 3 developers can agree to work on a project, they can start a little sub-project within Game Freak, which is how things like Giga Wrecker come around, Tembo, stuff like that.
That's what you mean by Valvean.
That's
Not
right.
this obscure black box where you have no idea what anybody's doing.
No. Instead, it's like a red and a white box,
Okay,
I
great.
believe. Yeah.
only also they're making games, which is
Also,
not
they're-
Valvean.
Yes, that's a great point. And so that, I think, is an interesting way for the company to kind of refresh themselves every once in a while, right? By having these different projects. And that's still, again, I have a lot to say about Game Freak, I'm sorry. But that's what's fascinating about that studio, is it has such an indie spirit, and they're pushing this entire franchise along with the mainline RPG series. Meanwhile, the juggernaut Nintendo owns a chunk of Pokemon.
Yeah.
The Pokemon company at this point, obviously, owns a chunk of Pokemon. So it's just like these mega corporations all looking to and counting on a relatively smallish team to keep moving ahead.
So do they have just such a small piece of that pie that, like, they're not raking in the money necessarily? Like, they have only so much they can throw into it? I
think
assume
that-
Nintendo would give them a ton of money. if
Oh,
they
no, I
wanted
don't think
to,
they're
but-
funding these things on their own. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously it's being funded and published by other folks. But at the same time,
But they're not making the millions necessarily.
I think they're doing all right.
I think they're doing just fine.
But definitely, I think that's what's fascinating is when Game Freak, even when we were there were a couple references to, like, hey, you want to talk about Little Town Hero? Should we talk about Little Town Hero? Right? And it's like, because that's where they get to keep
Oh,
a
sure.
larger piece of that pie. And I think that's a fascinating idea, is them trying all these little projects just to like, it's nice to get out from Pokemon every once in a while. Also, financially, we can kind of profit directly from these instead of Pokemon, which
Can
is...
we strike oil twice?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of just being sliced every which way with Pokemon.
Yeah, I forget what Masuda's answer was. So I asked him, like, would you ever want to do something with the Gear project system?
Oh,
And
yeah.
he did say yes, but I completely forget what
He
he
wanted to make a shooting game like R-Type.
Oh, that's right.
Is what he
yeah.
said in the rapid fire. And I trimmed that answer down a little bit, but he's like, I've always loved games like R-Type. I've wanted to make something like that for a long time. He's like, I don't know if I could anymore, frankly, but I don't know, something
It'll
like
just
that.
end up being like a turn-based RPG instead.
Right. Okay. So
And I think that kind of piggybacking off of the keeping this the size of the team smaller
Yeah.
is like they kept circling back to the idea of simplicity.
yes.
Like that was something that they just kept harping on every facet, whether it was designing Pokemon or like designing the mechanics for the game or just designing the communication within the team. It was like simplicity is key on like designing a Pokemon game.
It's such a weird thing, and maybe just when it's coming through translation, it's a little bit like we talked about last week with haikus or something, where it's like you're reading too much into it. But I found it absolutely fascinating. Where Masuda said, "Hey, it's really difficult to make things simple," and he made this grand analogy looking at the new character of Score Bunny. He's like, "Yeah, you look at this; it's simple enough to be like, oh, I can draw that. Kids can see it and say, oh, I can draw that." But at the same time, like, getting to that level of clean simplicity is so hard and takes so many iterations. And he used that as an analogy to talk about the Pokemon brand and mainline RPG series overall, where it's like, yeah, the wild area looks simple and clean. You don't think about all that's going on underneath the hood to create it, so you can trade in the background, have online players there. And he even said we had like a water bottle on the table, and the label was covering 30% of the water bottle. And he's like, this is like Pokemon. Like, they don't have the label going over the entire thing. It's clean. Only a little bit of the water bottle is actually taken advantage of, because you need that larger simplicity for people to be able to grab onto it. Wise words from a man who spent a lot of time thinking of a Pokemon.
Did they show you any of the super early sketches of some of those like characters and like, here, this is the really complicated like first version we did?
No.
I wish they did, because they would like they talked about how like they just iterate so many times and like the iteration cycles get longer and longer. It's like, no, that's too complicated. No, we need to go back to the drawing board with this one particular thing. I was talking to art director James Turner for a while about like, just the process of creating a Pokemon.
A British lad.
A British lad who relocated to Tokyo to design Pokemon.
It's an amazing career, and we have videos with him coming up later in the month.
And yeah, it was just like talking about the process of like, all right, the designers came and said they need a Pokemon that's like this. Come up with something like that. And, you know, just going back and forth and having discussions with the team about what is like, what's too simple, what's like too complex.
And the crazy thing is, after visiting the Monster Hunter team several times, how similar their messaging is. Monster Hunter to a much greater degree, but with Pokemon as well, is it's like James was stressing, like, hey, you'd be shocked how strict it is around here to like make these real creatures. You can't just say, hey, here's an ice cream cone, here's a Pokemon, right? It's like, no. You have to explain why it's that way.
Yeah.
And like to the point that, you know, the Galarian version of Weezing, what a hoot. It's got the dumb stovepipe thing. It's a great looking thing. But it's like, oh, no, there needs to be logic. Like, he's inhaling the smog and then projecting it out of the top and to clean and like recycle the air. Like, that level of anatomy and anatomical detail is important to the Pokemon series in a way you would not expect for a series that has cranked out something like Klefki.
That's amazing.
And he's like, you can't just make a cool or cute looking thing. It has every part of it has to have a reason. Like, why does it have those horns? Oh, it's because, you know, this other Pokemon is a predator and it needs to defend its young or something.
Right.
I wonder if they've seen that Pokenatomy book. Did you guys read that interview I did?
Yeah, I did.
A couple months ago, a guy wrote a book called Pokenatomy, where he's an actual like science teacher, biology teacher, and he went and tried to investigate like, how do these Pokemon actually work? Like, do they, like, how does that ice cream Pokemon, like, how does that actually, like, work biologically? And it was kind of interesting. So it sounds similar to this.
I think the process involves you have to pitch the panel and explain how these Pokemon work. So they do a lighter version of that internally.
And you asked him about, like, evolution, too, right? Like, natural, Darwinian
rapid
evolution?
fire.
I think it was a little goofier. Like, unfortunately, we didn't get, like, into the nitty gritty of evolution.
But because there are different regional variations, that would imply that Darwinian evolution does exist in the Pokemon universe. But yeah, the rapid fire, they were such good sports, and it always makes me laugh and makes me happy when I can make them laugh, and especially when they're still lighthearted and silly about this franchise that is such a juggernaut. Like just the fact that, you know, you can ask about, does Darwinian evolution exist with Pokemon? And that Masuda's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I haven't thought about that. Like, there's still so much flexibility within this series, even though there's, 4 people from the Japanese Pokemon company, like, watching intently with every answer they give and stuff off to the side. It's very fun.
It's fun.
It's a fun dynamic.
Did you guys actually learn anything about the game then? Or was
What
it
game?
mostly... it's called Sword and Shield, I
It
think?
was mostly behind the scenes stuff, but we did have a few stories that we threw up on GameInformer.com that were like the new stuff that we learned about the game. Like autosave is in the game, which is interesting. You can turn it off if you don't want it.
Right.
But I think that's pretty cool. I think that, like, especially if I'm playing in handheld mode, there's a good chance that it will die while I'm playing and I'll forget to save, even though Switch is very good about warning you that your battery's about to die.
Right.
The Game Boy Color was not so good about that, and I lost many saves.
That's true. Yeah, that is a change. I mean, it really is to these level of details. Like, we didn't see a demo of the game. We didn't see concept art that I can think of while at the studio. We have some that we're going to put up in a gallery later, which is surprisingly cool, and like I love it because it's
Very
really
cool.
rough early stuff, which is fun to see, along with like descriptions of who drew it and why and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the game itself, it's like learning a lot of those details like through the rapid fire, right? Like, okay, experience share is no longer an item, which I would alternate between turning that off and on in the past. So I'm a little bit bummed out that that's just baked in. So now all your Pokemon will level up, which I think is kind of, the series has been inching towards that way anyway. And obviously Let's Go had that as a function. So
Yeah, I'm definitely an experience share person. So ever since I used it for the first time, I'm like, oh, this is the way to play.
right.
That's an interesting window, though, that they're interested in appeasing fans who might not even want, like, autosave. That just seems like such a modern, normal thing.
Well, I wonder if experience share became a hard thing to balance. Like, all right, if you're only leveling this one Pokemon, it's going to make this part easy, or this part really easy for you. But if you're leveling everyone evenly, it's going to make that part really hard.
I get that,
But, like, autosave
kinda,
is-
but autosave, like, you
Yeah.
think everybody would want that.
I know, it seems like a default.
Well, the thing is with that is, like, if you're trying to catch a legendary Pokemon, like, you want to save before you go into that battle. So if you don't catch it,
Okay.
you can back out and like restart the game
Okay.
and try again.
So
like,
I guess that makes sense then.
yeah.
I stand
technically-
corrected.
It technically checks out. In terms of difficulty and balancing, I mean, it's shocking to go back. I don't know if you played on 3DS, but go back to those original games. Like, oh, actually, a little bit of grinding is recommended.
Yeah.
Whereas Sun and Moon, we did the game club on it when that came out in 2016. Oh my God, did that hold your hand? And
until the end, where it was like suddenly a giant difficulty spike in some of those end game battle or post game battles.
Right. So a couple things are exciting with Sword and Shield on that front. One is that Iwao, who directed Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, he's the like battle
Planning director.
Planning director is the official term, but he mainly focuses on the battles with Pokemon Sword and Shield. And he was emphasizing that like the max raid battles where you're fighting like a Dynamax out there, he's like, it's actually gonna be like the most challenging content relatively for the RPG series. And so I'm excited to see how challenging that is.
We said like because they're rated kind of like a Pokemon Go raid where it's like 1 to 5.
Yeah.
And if you go into like a 5-star raid, like he's like, there's situations where I will not win. And if you watch the rapid fire interview, Masuda and Omori said that Iwao's probably the best or like one of the best competitive battlers. So like that's saying something. If he's like one of the best competitive battlers in the studio and he can lose sometimes.
And they say it's not inspired by Pokemon Go's raids.
Well, they said they came up with it before Pokemon Go implemented it, and they had it called cooperative battles, like something really generic. And then once they saw like, oh, people like the term raid for this type of thing, like we can just call it a raid and people instantly know what it is.
And
Right.
Pokemon Go invented the term raid.
I do believe
So,
that's
yeah,
true.
that
I
is
do
true.
believe that's true. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And then in terms of holding your hand, the way they're talking about the wild areas has me intrigued. They wouldn't reveal when in the game you get access to it, but the way it's explained is like, oh, you can kind of choose your play style. Like if you want to have a slightly more open world-ish Pokemon experience, you can go into the wild areas and just go explore to your heart's content, or you can kind of stay on the more linear path and just keep moving through the story. So just seeing the series dip a toe in that slightly more open water, it's like, oh my God, just
Yeah.
jump in, please.
I just want like Breath of the Wild Pokemon.
Which last
That'd be
time
cool.
we went to the studio, I had an interview with Masuda where I talked about exactly that, about, would you ever make Pokemon meets Breath of the Wild, and he's like, well, no, because I don't know what you'd be doing if the world was that open. It's like, raising Pokemon, defeating gyms, it's right there. But if you want to see that addressed, it's in our video series from 2017. You can probably find that playlist on.
And did you yell at him like that?
Ah, I lost
No,
my mind!
come on!
It's right there! Let's see. Other stuff. Okay, there was a weird moment when WoW, continuing on the WoW topic here, him talking about how now your starter Pokemon and other Pokemon you catch in the beginning that you might be more sentimental about, they'll be more viable in the end game. Because you know how Pokemon works, Revenge is like, I gotta get rid of this Pidgeotto or Pidgeot. Like, it's cool, but come on, let's be real
it's
here.
not viable because it has great stats, but the personality type, man, it just sucks.
Right.
Like, it kind of, it's a bummer when like there's a Pokemon that you really like and it's just not built for competitive battle. So they have a new mechanic that he won't say what it is.
But he says you'll know when you see it.
Yeah. And basically it'll allow you to use those Pokemon competitively.
So he's implying that it'll fix the breeding issue of people spending too much time breeding.
If they don't want to, because he said they do
Yes.
see value in that effort of trying to like breed the perfect battle specimen. It's like, so if you want to continue doing that, you can. But if you don't, then you can use I have a feeling it's something to do with like either being able to change their personality type or something that like based on how much of like a bond the trainer has with the Pokemon, that'll make them stronger. So like if you had your starter since day one and you've been using them every single battle, then you probably have a good bond with them and that'll make them stronger.
Right.
Isn't there already items you can give them, like feed them stuff and it increases
But
their
it's still
stats,
like
though?
that innate Pokemon that you catch. Like those stats are really relevant, especially for competitive play. And they did talk a little bit about competitive play that they said we're, quote, feeling really confident about that. And they say like, hey, all throughout development, we've had tournaments, like a big one in the middle of development, just to try and test that competitive edge. And their angles, like the Dynamax abilities where you turn huge for 3 times, which is just a projection we learn, not actually the Pokemon.
Super weird to me.
It's confusing. And
Did
also
they say why that works?
no, they wouldn't really get into the numbers either, because I was trying to ask like specifically with the stats what happens when they're Dynamax, and they're like, well, it's a multiplication of sorts of the stats, but we cannot give exact numbers. Like, come on, everybody.
Well, the weird thing is there's Dynamax and there's Gigantamax. So any Pokemon can Dynamax, but only certain Pokemon can Gigantamax.
Wait, which one's bigger?
Well, that's the other thing, is that the Dynamax just makes the Pokemon larger and they have a weird aura around them. Gigantamax makes them larger, but they might change in like physical form. And they also might not just be getting stronger. They might just have like a different ability or a different
Like they would
different
change
stat.
into a different type of Pokemon?
No, like they
No,
just
no.
like think of like Mega Evolution, like how like Charizard looked different when he Mega evolved.
So kind of like that.
It would be like a visual difference instead of just getting bigger, and they would have like different abilities potentially. So that's the difference between it. So like since every Pokemon can Dynamax, but only select few can Gigantamax, there might be certain situations for a Pokemon where it's like, all right, well, X Pokemon is out. I'm going to Dynamax him because getting the stat boost would be more valuable than getting whatever this ability that he gets would do. So you have to be strategic about that.
Right, and he's just saying that there's a real tension now in battles, right?
Yeah,
Because you never
'cause-
know when someone's going to pop and do the Dynamax. And so that, I think, will help level the playing field a little bit on the competitive scene, where it's like you could have a turd from the beginning and then Dynamax them along with this mysterious feature, which will kind of level it out. So I think
and
the competitive scene might be more varied than just like having, okay, here are your go-tos.
And like it's different than Mega Evolution and Z moves because you don't need to have an item in order to use them. So like you could see like, oh, he's holding a different item. That Pokemon's holding a different item. That means that he can't Mega Evolve or use a Z move. So it's fine. I can just attack. Whereas like a Dynamax, since any Pokemon can do it, it's just like you never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah. So watch what they're holding.
Well, no, not in this one because now you don't know.
Don't look at their hands. in
He's
this
got
one.
a gun! Ah!
But yeah, so also since like they're Dynamax for what, 3 moves? Yeah, it's know that they're just going to attack then. So if you can figure out a way to defend against that and just kind of weather the storm, it's not like a all of a sudden thing, you know, like they're going to be giant for those 3 moves.
This isn't just for competitive stuff. This will be in like the main game.
Yes.
So like if I'm playing the main game, like it'll be more interesting.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
challenging.
In theory,
That sounds
yes.
good because I played Moon
Yeah.
when it came out, and like that was the first game I'd played in like 10 years.
Oh,
First
wow.
Pokemon game. And so like going back to that, I was like, okay, it doesn't feel like much has evolved here, and also it's like super super easy.
Yeah.
So like if I could play a game, I still like catching all those Mon. I want to get them all, and that's how it goes, right?
You got it, man.
But I want it to be a little more interesting.
Yes, well, it's interesting. I mean, Sun and Moon is pretty different, like not having gyms, a different structure, things like that. And so a lot of the way they're talking about Sword and Shield was, you'll never believe it, they say they want this to be the best, to be the ultimate Pokemon.
Like no game ever
very
was.
best?
Yes, but they did say that because it's the first mainline series or the mainline RPG on Switch, they kind of wanted to go back to basics in some ways. So that's why gyms are coming back and stuff like that. Brian Shea,
Yeah.
people are saying, based on the cover story, there are 18 gyms in this game.
Yeah.
Would you like to address this?
In a conversation with both Masuda and Omori,
Yeah.
I asked them about the difference between Sword and Shield, like just how different are these games?
Right.
And they gave me an answer which I also took the way the internet is taking, which means like, hey, there's a lot of gyms in this game, and like
18.
some of them will be Major League and some of them will be Minor League.
Depending on the types, they'll be flipped for each version,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So that's the way I took it, and that appears to be the way the internet took it in the quote that I put in the cover story. However, the Pokemon company reached out and said, hey, I think there might have been something a little lost in translation, or somebody might have misspoke. So I have the whole quote here.
So hang on, just to be clear, they're saying the message was like, I think there's like a standard amount of gyms in this entry. It's not 18.
Said similar to what has appeared in the past.
Right. So you want to read this quote and
this is
explain why it's
This is
confusing?
the quote from me asking how different are the two games.
Sure.
From an actual game, this is Shigeru Omori.
I can tell from your voice. I got it.
The director of Pokemon Sword and Shield. From an actual gameplay and experience perspective, there will be certain gym leaders that will be different depending on which version you've played. In terms of the setting itself, the background to the story is there's like this Japanese-style J1 and J2, like minor league and major league kind of concept. There are 18 different types of gyms in the story, and depending on the version, which gyms are in the minor league and which gyms are in the major league are different. For example, in Sword, the fighting type gym will be in the major league, but in Shield, the ghost type. The idea is that every year the Galar region is playing, and which gyms make it into the minor league versus the major league changes. Of course, as always, there's a difference in the kinds of Pokemon you can also encounter.
So that is where the confusion is. He's talking about the 18 types of...
That exist, we think.
Right.
Across
we
both versions.
No. Just in general,
Like
in
the
Pokemon
series,
as
there
a
are
series.
18 types of Pokemon.
Like hypothetical gym
there are 18
possibilities.
hypothetical gym types.
Right.
So I think that's where the confusion stemmed from. And
Yeah.
we still don't have an answer to how many gyms there are.
But it's fair to say we hurt ourselves in this confusion. That was a little Pokemon joke.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I don't know that now.
I get that joke.
What's
That's
Pokemon?
clever.
Yeah, great. We apologize to people who are confused about that as well. Game Explain, our wonderful friends over there, made a video about it, and I was like, oh no, I feel so bad that that's not accurate.
Well, we didn't know it wasn't accurate.
That's true.
And I don't know if anybody knows what's accurate at this point.
but
We're working to get to the bottom of it. And
That's right.
We will update you as soon as we know more.
yes, in terms of
No Maury.
feedback, overall, also I saw a lot of people saying, show us the starter evolutions. We do not know what they look like.
No, we don't.
We did not see them. We get like teases. We have a video series. Was that next week where it's going to be like a highlight on Grookey, a highlight on Scorbunny, a highlight on Sobble, just about their creation a little bit. And there's some teases in that as well about
Very
like
small teases.
what might be relevant for their evolutions. But we are not going to be revealing those evolutions. And actually, I like that. Like they're playing it all pretty close to the chest. And I kind of like that this time around.
It seems very different from how they did with like X and Y and Sun and Moon. Like they were like, hey, here's what these Pokemon look like.
X and Y in
way
particular,
before,
it was like, fully opening that kimono.
Do you think they'd ever get away from like, here's 3 starters, like just do something completely different, like 4?
It'd be fun.
Or, just like vary it up quite a bit.
Well, we asked in the rapid fire about like changing from grass, fire, water to like something else, and they're like, no, we don't want to do that. It makes too much sense to have like that rock, paper, scissors in the starters.
But there's still everything is
That's
a rock,
across
paper,
the board,
scissors.
though, yeah.
But I understand. There's certain things where it's like, okay, you want to do things the way you want to do things. It's your series, baby. Other things talking about battling. I thought it was interesting. I didn't even think about this when you asked if there's going to be an announcer in those stadiums.
Yeah.
No announcer.
I was bummed about that, to
Yeah.
be quite honest, because
Yeah.
I really wanted like Pokemon Stadium or Pokemon Coliseum, whatever the recent Wii
is
one.
he down and out?
I wanted that baked into like a main Pokemon game. And I
Right.
thought that would be so cool now that we finally have graphics to support it on a
Yeah.
main Pokemon game. But still,
Brian, you could be that announcer.
I could. I will volunteer next
Shoutcaster.
time I'm in
right.
Game Freak.
There's also little details that we learned, like, there's a little camera rotom like flying around,
Yeah.
and so the camera will like cut to its perspective every once in a while for like kind of like that fly-by-wire stadium view in
And
a
like
lot of sports
the
events.
atmosphere was a huge part of it. Like the crowd's gonna react to what's going on the field, and like they're gonna chant and sing songs apparently, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
It's gonna be festive.
I want to know how like overwhelming the crowd feels like in a giant stadium like that, because
Yeah,
that's
we'll
always
see.
kind of what you picture like in your head when you're playing like on the original Game Boy games. Like,
Yeah.
I bet there's like people watching and
Yeah,
like
you want
cheering.
it to feel epic, absolutely. Other interesting details: the Sword and Shield names came very late in development.
Yeah.
and they're actually like, okay, let's just look to the legendaries we already made. One's a sword, one's a shield. Let's go with that. And Masuda's like, it's also, we thought it was interesting because they're such strong words, but Pokemon are cute, so there's a little something there.
And they were like, yeah, what do you use with the power that you get? Do you use to like attack or protect or something like that? Like
Right,
if you had power, would you attack something or would you protect someone?
And Ryu's the answer is
Give birth.
give birth, ladies and
Create new
gentlemen.
life. That's what I do.
But then also I thought it was interesting. I didn't understand this at all, but the legendary dogs, their names come because Omori wanted to like get back to the colors. Like
Yeah.
naming things after colors in Pokemon is so important, and he wanted to get back to that with the legendaries. So Zamacenta,
Is the magenta, because that's what color.
right? And
Wait,
then-
really?
Yes,
Does that rhyme work in Japanese?
I guess so, because the legendaries don't get localized. Those names are universal.
Oh, okay.
So even on that front, they mentioned that, like, because they're universal, it becomes tricky. Like, Dialga in Spanish sounded like the word for algae, apparently, but like, F it, we just got to stick with it. But anyway, so then, like, Zacia is Cyan.
Zacian.
I'm sorry. Because
Cyan.
Right, because he's like, oh, it'd be fun, like, because they're legendary, like, people think they see something out of the corner of their eye and they come up with a nickname for it. And it's like, oh, the Cyan thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the name behind those legendaries.
Did you guys ask them about Pokemon Gun at all? Like, if
Oh,
they
that
even,
joke?
Like, noticed that?
Oh no!
Or,
They,
like,
I
what they
mean, they're
thought?
on the internet. I think they
probably
see a
saw
lot of
it.
that stuff.
I wonder
yeah.
if they're like, oh no.
That's the joke. That's going to be the third version and whatnot. Yeah. No, we did not learn anything about that.
We probably would have gotten a no comment if we asked about that.
Oh man, do they love some no comments? But that's fine. You get it. The part that maybe the most emotional being at that studio was like talking to them just about their sense of directing and their different directing styles. Like what a treat. Like talking to Masuda about like handing the reins over to Omori because Masuda just wants to produce games now. He directed Let's Go, but he said like this is the end for me. And so talking about how Omori's directing style is different, he put it in a very beautiful way where Masuda's like, well, I am the composer, right, for a lot of these games, and so I think of things in a very musical way. So when I'm trying to give instructions, it's more soft and flowy, whereas like Omori comes from an art background, so the analogy is he can be like, here's specifically what I want you to do, here's a drawing, go
just
for
draw
it.
it.
But like even learning about like, how much Masuda's mind has to flip from directing mode to composing mode was just fascinating. Like at some point, Omori said that Masuda like sent him an email when they're working on Pearl and Diamond, and he's like, I don't understand. What is with this email? Like, it's the most flowery, confusingly written thing. And I guess Masuda had just been like composing music all day. So he's like, oh, I sent that email when my brain was in composition mode, not directing mode. Because Omori's like, I don't
Composition
know
mode.
what this is, dude. Yeah, just fun little details like that.
That's fun.
Or talking to Masuda about, because he's also a programmer as well. And he's like, oh, nowadays I can't really help out with Sword and Shield's programming. He's like, but I do know the mindset of programmers. And I know that when a programmer tells me something's impossible, I know they're lying. Because nothing's impossible for programmers. I know that firsthand, dude.
Get back to work.
It's a fascinating studio.
Should people like me,
Yes.
Pokenorms,
Yeah.
people who are like casual fans, be excited for this one? Does this feel like the one that's like, all right, this might be get you back into it a little bit?
I think just having it on Switch, I mean, honestly, Let's Go was better than I was expecting.
I think for a lot of people that was the case.
And even with that baby game in the past, now having, Game Freak's first real stab at a mainline RPG on the Switch.
Well, they said
I'm
that was
excited
like
for
kind
it.
of their way of figuring out the Switch and how to make a game.
They called it their
for
pilot program
Yeah.
for developers. Yeah. And so, I think there's going to be frustrating things in it, but overall, just seeing them inch a little bit more towards freedom and having the new mechanics of Dynamax and just a whole new set of Pokemon, like, I'm going to be excited to play that on my Switch. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, again, we haven't really played too much of it. We played it at E3,
Yeah.
and we didn't. I made a league card.
Oh, yeah. We'll
That was
show
the
that
only
off.
hands-on that I got.
That's true.
During this trip. But yeah,
But even that moment was cool because we got to see like a build of one of the towns, even though they wouldn't tell us what the name of the town was. But you've seen it in the trailers. It's the one with kind of like gears moving and it's kind of red.
it's one that looks like it's in the UK.
That's right. Kind of like red brick and stuff like that. But even seeing like James Turner fly us through that file in Maya, it's like, this is a treat. Just seeing like behind the scenes, like a Maya file for a Pokemon game. We'll be sharing some of that footage in the future as well. But what else we got at gameformer.com/Pokemon, Brian?
Lots of stuff. We'll
Yeah.
have the concept art gallery you mentioned. We'll have a discussion on a potential Pokemon timeline.
Oh,
and by
yeah.
discussion, I mean just a long quote from Masuda talking about it.
Right. Like the merits of whether there's a Zelda-esque timeline for Pokemon, because it does get confusing.
It does. And we'll have lots of videos from you. Like you said, the starter videos. We have the rapid fire up now.
Yeah, that's fun. We also have maybe the one I'm most excited about now that Rapid Fire is out the door is it's really different, but it's James Turner, the art director, who's British. He's drawing his favorite Pokemon a little bit like we did with Darksiders 2. Remember where
cool.
Joe Mad drew Death? It's a little bit like that where he's drawing
like
a Pokemon
talking about it.
and kind of explaining his history and the process of drawing. Also, we got that drawing to auction off during Extra Life
What?
this year, so that should be very exciting. So gameformer.com/Pokemon, a lot of fun stuff.
Awesome.
While we were there, we said, hey, could we film the development floor of Pokemon a little bit? And they said, no, but we have Little Town Hero. Have at it. Because,
Oh, really?
So that development
Huh.
floor was wide open because they're like, yeah, it's being released on the Nintendo Switch, but they're like, yeah, we're making it ourselves and publishing it ourselves. So go ahead and film on this development floor. So we have a couple shots from the development floor of Little Town Hero, as it's called now, no longer Town working title. And we got to actually interview Taya, who's the director, and Tochigi, who's the art director.
Were those two floors much different? Like, did they feel different, like vibe-wise, or did it seem like, well, if you squint your eyes, this could be the Pokemon floor?
It feels like it's all a little bit the same. Yeah, yeah. It has like a cool walkway where there's like a meeting room and there's side of this wooden tunnel and stuff. It was
That was
really
weird.
unique
You
looking.
had to step up into the wooden tunnel, which
Right. Yeah.
I guess it used to be a break room on the other side, but they turned it into a meeting room.
It's very cute. But it's fascinating just talking to Game Freak about the Gear project system where 3 developers, if they're all interested in the same thing, can create a little side project. And that's how Town started, now called Little Town Hero, right? Where the director, I mean, this is that Game Freak talent. You talk to this guy and it's like, how long have you been here? He's like, oh, I've been programming Pokemon games for 20 years now. It's like,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Good grief.
And now he gets to direct Little Town Hero. And he's like, I want to make an RPG for adults who don't have as much time and just make them more compact, like all the highs and lows of an RPG, but just boil it down to one town. So you're going to be moving around the town in the battle to get perks from different townspeople, stuff like that.
That sounds neat.
Yeah, he said it's going to cost $25.
Yeah. It's
Also-
out this month.
It's out October 16th. Yeah, they also said when asked
Take my
about
money
no kidding
already.
when asked about the Nintendo Switch and exclusivity, they're like, we can't comment for now. It's on Nintendo Switch, which was interesting. Like you see it as being so tied to Nintendo, but just the idea that it could eventually be ported out of there is fascinating.
And we had a discussion with them about how they came about collaborating with Toby Fox.
Yeah, because the composer for Undertale and the director of Undertale is writing the music for Little Town Hero.
From what I understand, it's most of the music is Toby Fox, and the rest of it is one of the composers from Pokemon Sun and Moon.
Right. And so Goichi, who's a composer on the Pokemon series.
No, Grookey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Goichi actually was obsessed with Undertale, recommended Undertale to everybody. He got in touch with Toby Fox, and they were talking on Twitter. And then I assume it was an 8-4 party because they did the Japanese localization of Undertale over there. But they had a party to celebrate the launch of Undertale in Japan. And at that, Toby Fox was there, and then Goichi was there from Game Freak. And that's when they got to know each other, and that's when this whole collaboration came around.
That's cool.
And so I asked the director of Little Town Hero, like, hey, what do you think about the soundtrack so far for Little Town Hero then? And he goes, well, my main fear right now is that the soundtrack will outsell the game.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he says it's
Oh
that
my
good.
gosh. Toby Fox, though, like that guy feels like he's got to be riding pretty high right now. Like,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like that little indie game he made just like sent him off on a new trajectory in life.
He's
for sure, yeah.
riding so high that he can just release episodic follow-ups that are completely free.
And then in his spare time, collaborate with Game Freak.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm looking forward to Little Town Hero. I think it's going to be cool. And they said they started its development long before the Switch. They even knew that was a thing. Like this project from the Gear
Really?
Project System has been gearing up for a while.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, fun stuff.
I'm excited for it. I want to check that out.
Same here. Let's see. Ben Reeves, my mouth's going to explode. Let's talk about Shenmue 3.
Mouth is going to explode.
Tell us the story of the Shenmue 3 journey, Ben Reeves.
Shenmue 3. Where to start? You want to start with the game? Like talk about how good it is?
Okay. All right.
Well,
you
we could
jerk.
just no. Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Yes, let's talk about the game first. So we got to see a lot more of this game than we did for Pokemon Sword and Shield. It was maybe an hour and a half of gameplay?
We got to play we saw 2 sections of the game, like an early area that actually just got released for backers. So you
Yes.
maybe you've already seen that area. And then we saw like a later area, another town, it's like a bigger town in China that you wander around. We did some combat. We did some QTEs. It was flawless at it.
This was the highlight. Well, one of the highlights of the trip was all the developers watching Ben Reeves fail repeatedly at this QTE over and over again. And it was very funny because there's one scene where there's like this little girl who's in the way as the characters are running by. And then like you do the QTE and the little girl goes flying. But then like the twist is you think she's going to blow it. And then she lands. There's like a 3-point landing.
Yeah, like Spider-Man or something.
Yeah. And at that point, Yu Suzuki turned around and looked at me. And in English, he goes, like the Matrix.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, all right, man.
I just want to point out with Ben Reeves failing repeatedly and all the developers watching, when I played Shenmue 3 in front of Yu Suzuki
Oh, yeah.
at E3, he was very impressed by my skills.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we
He
did
said
learn
the same thing to me though. So I think
That's right. Yeah. There are going to be 4 difficulties for Shenmue 3, and he was talking about like the highest difficulty. He specifically said, "Don't play this," because it like brings it all. Like even the gambling ratios are changed, so it's all like
What?
real world. But it's going to be apparently very brutal. The quick time timing is going to be very, very tight.
Yikes.
I think he said like, "Oh, this is like hell" or something like that. Didn't he? He compared
No,
it.
he said it's a nightmare.
Nightmare, that's what he
was
said.
his quote.
Well, so is hell. to be
that's
fair.
true. The first nightmare.
You made an interesting analogy. I was like, they've accidentally made the perfect sequel to Shenmue.
This is the big takeaway: is playing this game like. It's a little bit janky, of course. The lip syncs are a little bit weird. Transitions are awkward. But it's coming from a sincere, fascinating place where it's just Yu Suzuki is a director who doesn't keep up with modern games. He's this legendary director from Sega's old days, and everybody is just trying to please him. But when he is just on a completely different path from the rest of the industry, and it's made on a budget because it's crowdfunded. Also, Deep Silver's helping out. Sony's actually helping to pay for this thing, which I didn't realize. Sega's getting a cut. So just the tendrils of this thing is complicated.
Yeah.
But because of these insane factors, they have made a perfect Shenmue 3 that could have been released in 2004 or something like that. I mean, not visually, obviously, it's better than that.
Oh
but-
yeah, it does look better. It doesn't totally look like a modern game, but it looks better than the originals. Like those original games, like that first game was before GTA 3 even existed. Like
Yeah.
imagine a pre-GTA 3 world. Like it came from a place where they threw a ton of money at it, and you was trying to explore this concept of open world, although that term didn't really exist in the industry. So it was very experimental, very wild, and that's how it ended up the way it ended up.
Right. He said at some point, "I'm very happy to know I created the original open world game. I triggered the trend." But then we asked him about I think you asked, what is Shenmue bringing to the open world genre or just games in general that isn't anywhere else? What's lacking out there? And he's just like, I don't play other games much, so I can't answer your questions. But he's like, other people tell me that it's just that idea that you have multiple paths to some goal,
Right.
which is an interesting just philosophical idea. He's like, well, when there's only one path to a goal in a video game, your brain shuts off the second you find what that path is. But I want there to be so many different routes to every objective in this game and have everything influence everything else that your brain will never shut off.
Right. So you're just really exploring this little world that he's created, this little town you're the hero of. But just things like opening every drawer, which is like a thing from the original game, or the thing that kind of interested me or fascinated me is just you have to like pick things up, and so you pick them up, and there's this animation where you
to
kind of look
rotate
at
it,
it,
yeah.
and like if you want to pick up multiple things and add them to your inventory, you have to pick them each up one by one. It just feels kind of like
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Well, you know,
Little. There's some analogy to be made there. Yeah, and just like the overall philosophy of Shenmue, I think is fascinating because hearing Yu Suzuki talk about it and how it started with like, well, I liked RPGs on the Apple II. I loved Wizardry. I loved Ultima, and so I wanted to make a game that was basically the explosion of those ideas, to take all those broad concepts of being able to do anything and put that in a game. And it's so fascinating to hear like this track, Shenmue is one track branching from Wizardry and Ultima. I think the immersive sim genre is another track that records its ancestry back to the same Apple II games. Just to know that in Japan, Yu Suzuki just sees things a little bit differently, has a different style. And Shenmue and Prey are a lot closer than you'd expect on the gaming family tree, which is just insane.
yeah, it's interesting to think about. It is interesting too, where it feels like everybody's followed the GTA style open world concepts, right? But and Shenmue is kind of off in its own little world, but there's people who really like that series. And I think this, the one thing I walked away with was that this feels more like Shenmue than I guess I thought.
Right.
I don't know what I expected, but
Pros
like
and cons in a
yeah,
way,
pros
right?
and cons. But like if you're a big fan of that series, then this is what you want.
I'm in.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of the biggest anomalies, which is fascinating in the game industry, if it is in fact released in 2019, which they're like, maybe it'll hit this release date.
What? They didn't. Oh, no.
It seems like it's going to, but not locked in at this point.
Well, it was already supposed to come out in August, right?
Right, and it was
And
delayed,
it was
to November. But I think his exact quote was probably in the rapid fire, but whether or not it's going to hit that date.
That
But
might
yeah,
have been a little tongue in cheek because you instruct people before the rapid fire, like, it's a little silly.
maybe.
So
Yeah, maybe
maybe,
he
I don't
was
know.
being silly. But it's definitely everything you'd expect from a game called Shenmue 3, right? But it is so bizarre. Like I already mentioned, the different corporate tendrils running into this thing that Sega let them use this license to begin with. There's so many weird details,
Right.
and it's coming from such a strange place because just the idea of Yu Suzuki being this legendary designer, and he brought in a lot of the old Shenmue talent. Like the executive producer worked with him back at Sega. The assistant director, like the second director, is just this fascinating guy. Hang on, let me get his name right. Okayasu, because he comes in, and I think even before we
This
asked
young
him,
punk.
no, but like before we even asked him the first question, it was so funny to me because you could tell Yu was kind of like whispering in his ear for a while about like, okay, mention this, don't mention this, like basically instructing him like, here's how you deal with the press type of thing. I would imagine. I don't speak Japanese.
Well, it feels like he's coaching him.
Yes.
Like this young guy who's never done an interview.
Right.
before.
And then it's like, okay, Akiyasu, what's your history in the game industry? He's like, oh, I've been working with Yu Suzuki since 1988. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. He's been around for almost as long. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it was
Holy
really
hell.
fun. Like him talking about the challenge with the first Shenmue. This is Okayasu talking about working with you and just the challenge of trying to understand what his vision was. And he's like, oh, now when I came aboard with the Shenmue 3, I see a lot of the younger developers having that same struggle. I was like, what does you want? Like, this is Yu's baby. And like, he is at the top of every flowchart. Like everything runs through him. This is his brainchild, and just trying to work that way is a real challenge.
It was interesting because I interviewed Yu Suzuki the day they announced Shenmue 3
Yeah.
Oh, really?
on the PlayStation stage. Because at one point, Shenmue 1 was one of my favorite games of all time.
Holy God.
Yeah, I loved Shenmue 1. And so
Sounds like you should review this game.
it popped up that like, hey, we have a Yu Suzuki interview after the PlayStation press conference that year, and I was like, I'll take it. I'm free that time.
Yeah.
So like I got to talk, and he was just like beaming with like how happy he was that he finally could announce this game that's
Oh,
coming.
yeah.
Like because people were like begging him for like what 2 decades at that point almost,
Yeah.
a decade and a half. So
Oh yeah, he was very happy
Yeah,
that day.
he was-
and he still seemed pretty like proud. Like he had the Guinness World Record there for like because Shenmue was the fastest Kickstarter to raise $1 million. or
Right,
something
they
like
brought that out,
Yeah,
and it
so that was kind of
point.
cool to see.
And but there was this interesting like nervousness that he had before the announcement where he was like, I don't know if anybody's going to remember Shenmue. I don't know if anybody's going to care that I'm announcing Shenmue 3 on a stage at E3. And then he's like, once like the logo popped up and he heard the crowd like just lose their minds, he was like, all right, I can like relax now. People actually still remember this.
Yeah, he goes by Harry, the executive producer. He's like, I think the crowd actually reacted louder than the Final Fantasy VII remake, which I'll have to go back and check that tape. I don't know what that, but he's like, I'm really shocked by just the amount of love.
Both of those things were surprising. I would say Shenmue was maybe a little more surprising than Final Fantasy in my mind.
Sure.
Although I'm more excited for Final Fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, other things. Talking about how, Yu's the director and everything's going through him. This secondary director that then said that's why the project is killing him, which is nice. And and just like the sense of like duty and like respect to Yu Suzuki is the most fascinating part of that entire studio visit. Not only like his daughter works at the studio and she's constantly bringing in coffee and like making sure Yu's happy and everything like that, but just beyond that, like, Okayasu, the secondary director, he didn't work at YSNet with Yu Suzuki, and then when they announced Shenmue 3, he's like, oh, somebody has to help this dude. We've got to go back and like make this thing happen. Like, you can't do this by himself.
It was kind of the story. It was like, hey, are they gonna call me, or should I call him? And
right,
because I want to help him. Like, and there's kind of this little story of like how both of them were like, well, I'd like him to help, but I'm sure he's busy. I don't want to bother him.
Yeah,
and then eventually they connected.
Speaking of little stories,
yes,
I heard a rumor you guys were stuck in a van.
Okay, this is a long saga. Let's focus on the game real quick. We got to wrap this stuff up, then we'll get to that one. So also the sound director, Nakamura, he worked with you back when he was still called Virtua Fighter RPG. And if you're interested in the history of Shenmue and the structure of Shenmue and like, the legends that, he wrote 11 chapters of Shenmue and now he's making one game at a time, stuff like that. We're going to post like a travelogue video because Yu Suzuki actually took out his original notebooks and like the cutscene notebooks and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we got to look at them and take pictures of them. And we have video of it and stuff like that. So that'll be a separate thing on GameInformer.com.
I will watch that.
You can also read
please
the
do.
feature in GameInformer.com because I dive into the history of the franchise as well as some of the stuff that happened to us when we were on the trip, but talk about those notebooks as well.
Right. But just real quick, talking about the sound director, I wanted to get this point out there because I think a lot of people are like, how do you do the VO direction for a new Shenmue? Like, do you try and make it sound old? And so he said that they coached the actors if they were returning, like Rio and stuff like that, to listen to the old way that they were speaking and try and match that perfectly.
Yeah.
And then also in the game, you can call characters from Shenmue 1 and 2.
What?
And so he's like, we wanted those characters to be exactly like they were in the old game. But then there are also new characters and new voice actors, and those, he said, they weren't coached to speak that way. So I don't know if there's going to be like a weird disconnect between certain performances versus others just based on trying to stay within those tight, uncomfortable reins of
Does the
Shenmue
audio
voice
quality
acting.
at least sound better?
Yes.
Because it sounded like they were like covering their hands and talking like this.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that kind of voice
I
quality?
don't understand.
Naomi, hello.
Yeah.
I actually briefly talked to the voice actor, the English voice actor.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Rio, and it was kind of late in the game, so I didn't include anything in the like written feature. But it was interesting to talk to him, and like he didn't think he had got the job because he kind of went in and did his audition, and they didn't ask for any changes, and he's like walked away. He's like, well, I guess that was that. And then they called him like the next day. He's like, hey, get ready to fly out to Japan. And then when he came back for the third one, he was like, I wonder if we should update it or something because my take on it was a little stoic. But they were like, no, we want you to do it exactly like you did it originally. And so
Wow.
he's like, okay.
Here goes nothing,
Yeah.
Shenmue fans. Outside of that, like in the demo, like you said, we got to see this larger town and the overall idea. This is coming from the secondary director. You always want to do kind of like a treasure hunt in Shenmue. And so there's going to be these collectibles, and there's 140 shops in this town in the game.
What?
And each shop has what's called a chobu-chan, which is this little cute bird hidden somewhere in the shop. And it sounds easy to like, I'll find a little action figure, but it's absurd. Like some of these are microscopic, like hidden in jewelry, stuff like that.
We were staring at this like pile of apples, and we're like, do you see it? And it took me a minute, but it was like right next to the apple. It was like in the pile of apples, and it looked almost exactly like an apple.
And
It
Yu
was weird.
Suzuki was so tickled by this. He reminded me of like my grandpa, or even like Miyamoto in a way. Like that simple pleasure of like, find the Chobu-chan. When we were looking for it, he'd come over and like wink, like, ooh, like smile at us every time we're trying to find this thing. It's very
It's like
fun.
when you hid those Pokemon stuffed animals for your nephew to find.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I did do
Just
that.
like it.
That's
Huh.
unrelated. But
I'm
also,
just trying to show off how good of an uncle you are.
thank you. That's very sweet. But Also, Chobu-chan, the fun thing is there's an arcade in Shenmue 3, of course. It has, mini games, stuff like that, all themed after the 80s because it takes place in 1987. There's also space for like coming soon arcades, and you can drive a forklift and deliver those arcade games throughout the game. But one of the games is called Chobu-chan Fighter, which is like big, the Chobu-chan bird thing in like a Virtua Fighter style fighting game.
Yeah. So the original, the first two Shenmues had actual Sega licensed arcade games, like the original like stuff that you had actually worked on, like Outrun and
Space Harrier.
And this game doesn't have actual games like the old arcade games, but it has games that they've made that are based on those games.
He also told me at E3, because I asked this exact question about, hey, like, Sega isn't publishing this game. Does it have any Sega licensed stuff? And the answer was no. It has posters about some of those things, but you won't actually have the games in it, or like the capsule toys, which I was really bummed about.
It's interesting talking to them, too, about trying to get the project off the ground with Shenmue 3. And the executive producer said, quote, unfortunately, Sega wasn't very helpful. But they eventually worked out, and it's amazing that Sega let them use the IP and all that stuff.
It is interesting because we talked to them about the Sega thing a couple times, and we're like, how did this work? And just trying to get like little bits of information and piece it together. It seemed like, according to you, that Sega was totally willing to let him use the property
because they're like,
issue.
because they're like, well, who else is going to do something with this property? Like, it's again coming back to that theme of so much respect for Yu Suzuki's career.
I think he even said something like, I'm the only person who they'll let do this.
Right. And they even gave them all the old design documents. They gave them the source code for Shenmue 1 and 2. And it's like, they can't do anything with it. But it's like, oh, that's incredibly generous of Sega.
And that's crazy, seeing as how they just re-released 1 and 2.
Right.
So it's wild they would give them the source code for that.
I think they had a copy. Not that they'd hand it over fully.
Well, yeah.
But then just talking about, Yu Suzuki, he was inspired a lot by Ryan Payton, friend of the show from Republic, producer of Metal Gear Solid 4, stuff like that. He was on our Red Dead Redemption 2 discussion, I think, last on this podcast. But he's the one who was really pushing for Yu Suzuki to do a Kickstarter for Shenmue 3. So a lot of thanks goes to him throughout this entire thing. But apparently then before that, they were shopping Shenmue 3 around for like a year, trying to find any publisher that would take it, and none would. Yeah. And that's when he said that Sega was not.
I actually had a chance to talk to Ryan Payton as well briefly, and like it was an interesting anecdote that I included in the feature, but they, for a while before the Kickstarter happened, they were like, we're going to have to do this really cheap, like we're not going to have a ton of money, maybe we should do it in the style of Telltale's The Walking Dead, where it's kind of more of an adventure game where you can just get the story out there. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but then they made enough money on the Kickstarter, they're like, well, we should just give fans what they really want. That was what Yu was like. He was like, I really just want to give fans what they want.
Let's just go all in.
Which
on
is
this.
a full game.
And that was totally echoed in that first interview, like, because the Kickstarter had just opened. I don't think they'd even cracked 1 million at that point. And he was like, yeah, I don't know what this game is going to be. Like,
oh, yeah. They've said, like, worst case scenario is just if they barely cross the $2 million goal threshold. And he's like, if it just barely crossed 2 million, Shenmue 3 would look very different. And at that point, Yu Suzuki like tapped on his phone. Like, there would be a phone game, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, that's amazing.
But luckily, they got enough funding to eventually bring this thing home. But the funding, I know they were really nervous about, like, we hope the fans like it, like the look and stuff like that. But it's that fascinating middle ground of, it was one of the first questions we asked in the Rapid Fire, which is going up on Friday with Yu Suzuki, which is fun. But just trying to figure out, like, is this a retro game or do you see this as a modern game, Yu Suzuki? Like, what is this? Because it feels so retro. Parts of it look good, right? But it's just fascinating because Yu Suzuki in that first town, that first area, he's like, I wanted the visuals to be so impactful that you could smell them. I wanted you to be able to smell this wildlife out there and stuff. Where it's like, okay, it looks pretty good, but other games are out there. Like, it's a tough thing to compare, right?
when he said that, he actually brought out potpourri and was like, yeah, you can smell it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, Shenmue smells like a Japanese office building. It's crazy. It's like I'm there.
But yes, you hinted at it. The most absurd / strange part of this trip, Brian Shea,
My
was
favorite story that you've told.
Yes, we were there on the anniversary of the Dreamcast launch. So we're there on September 9th, 2019. Also on that day, a typhoon hit Japan and took out a lot of the trains, stuff on the tracks that they had to clear up and stuff like that. So getting around Tokyo on the 9th, was just a complete nightmare.
You couldn't really.
Yes.
It took forever to get a cab. Like,
it was
the trains were
hot.
down. It was super hot.
Oh, it was hell. We eventually got there, and then one of the early pitches we got was like, come out to Japan, do a Shenmue 3 feature, we'll show you Chinatown or this area that was largely inspiring for Shenmue's development. Yu Suzuki will give you a tour. You can film it. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds great. And so that just kept getting bumped later and later in the day because Rapid Fire took a while.
Right.
We got there late because
Well,
of the
we got
typhoon.
late, yeah.
So everything was behind schedule. And then it was one of those things where at the end, it was like 6:30 or something. It's like, all right, let's jump in my daughter's van. Let's go to Chinatown. It's like, do you really want to do this?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we're going to do it.
It was like 4 or 5 times throughout the day. We're like, hey, we're fine pushing this off. We don't need to do this video.
We'd rather look at the game.
We would rather play more of the game if we have
Right.
time. But it seemed like he really wanted to take us out there. And so we're like, okay, we'll go.
So we jumped in his daughter's van, drove to Chinatown, which in order to get there from where the studio is, you have to go across a large bridge. And right when we got on the bridge, traffic came to beyond a standstill. It was...
Going backwards?
Yeah.
Yes, I guess it was.
It stretched out time. That's how much of a crazy stop this
Zero
was.
exaggeration. We were in a van with just sweltering heat with Yu Suzuki and his daughter for 2.5 hours.
And this was supposed to take like 30 minutes to maybe 40,
I think less
40
than
minutes.
that. I think it was like 20 minutes to
It
get
was
to
not a long
Chinatown.
drive.
But because of the traffic, it was brutal. And so we're in this van, and at a certain point, Yu Suzuki's like, he's in the front seat. He's like, hey, I guess you guys can interview me if you want. It's like, hell yeah. 2.5 hours with Yu Suzuki. Let's get this tape rolling. Let's go. Tried asking a question where it's like, oh, I heard that you were responsible in the 90s for converting Sega to working on Macs and Apple products instead of PCs. And that's what kind of prepared, like the simplicity of Apple products is what gave Sega a head start on the internet, and that's why the Dreamcast was such an early internet adopter, stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, I think some other Sega executive mentioned that in an interview one time, but I don't remember anything like that. Oh, okay. And then the translator was too busy looking at Google Maps, so he couldn't be bothered to translate anything else.
I think we
So
asked a
it's
couple other questions and just none of it was getting translated.
yeah, it's like, okay, we'll just stay in this car. And then it became more surreal when his daughter took out her phone and just started playing Netflix off her phone, like through the car's audio system, though.
Uh-huh.
So Yu Suzuki just sat in the front seat and watched a full episode of NBC's Blacklist with James Spader. And we just sat there quietly watching Blacklist
We're
with
like,
Yu Suzuki.
do you like Blacklist? Like, what's up? Kind of like, what's up with this? And he was like, yeah, I think it's a well-made show, is what he said. We're like, okay.
Yeah. And then after Blacklist, somehow it was chosen that Fuller House would be played. And then we watched a full episode of the reboot or continuation of Full House. And at some point then, I think Reeves, you were joking around and asked about Full House, and Yu Suzuki then said, quote, Full House is the foundation of Shenmue. He was joking,
Which
but it
is
was
pretty good, though.
It was very silly and fun. If you want to see footage of this trip, we're going to have that travelogue posted soon with some clips from being trapped in this car.
From the van from hell.
I loved it, man. It was such a unique way to experience this legendary developer. And even beyond that, not to get too personal, but it was fascinating to spend that much time with a legendary game developer's daughter who had spent time in California. And so her English was great. And just talking to her about, like, what is it like to have this father figure? And she's like, oh, it turns out like the price of having a father who's such a legend in the game space is he was never home. Like his life was consumed by Sega, or when he was home, he was watching, what was it, like 600 films in a year or something like that.
We talked to him, we're like, he's like, oh, I made a commitment with Shenmue that I was going to watch one movie a day on average.
To
And so,
understand narrative structure.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, it doesn't totally seem necessary to me, but like, okay, that's interesting. So he was talking about stuff like Casablanca and like
His favorite
obviously-
films are Casablanca and Hustler, I think. Pool film.
Oh yeah. And then he talked about Studio Ghibli films as well.
Yeah,
and,
which
like,
is very fun.
legendarily, he was inspired by Kung Fu films as well for the creation of Shenmue. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of like films that went into that series.
Have you?
Turns out.
Did you guys ask him at all about the Yakuza series?
A little bit in the rapid fire. He didn't exactly light up when it was mentioned.
Because I've asked Sega's, like their producer of the Yakuza series, Nagoshi, and he immediately like, no, there's no relation whatsoever. Even though I looked at his credits and he worked on
he
Shenmue.
did work on Shenmue. It
Well,
seems
that-
like it's a weird offshoot, but that relationship is still confusing to me.
That was what I'd always heard when the first Yakuza was being made. It's like, hey, this is part of the team that made Shenmue, and kind of taking some of the ideas but spinning them off into its own new thing. But
Right.
it seems like the further out we get, the more that Yakuza's like, we made our own thing. We don't
It's different
necessarily
enough.
have that history. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It was,
Nobody wants to acknowledge it.
yeah, it was fascinating. Yeah, your feature is great in the magazine, Reeves, and we'll have the rapid fire up on Friday and that travelogue showing some of that trip overall too, especially looking at like those design notebooks. If you're a Shenmue fan, I think you'll get a kick out of that.
It sounds like I got out of Japan just in time. So I think like the
Yeah.
next day after I landed in the States was Typhoon Day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Legendary Typhoon Day.
Flew over it.
Yeah. I've been talking too much. Shay, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair.
Yeah.
How is this 2D game?
It's good. I'm not super deep into it just yet. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a nice 2D game from, the former Rare devs that a lot of them worked on Donkey Kong Country.
And you liked Yooka-Laylee more than most. It seemed like the camera had a lot of issues, but it got a lot of that old Rare flavor.
It really did. And I am 100% more of a Donkey Kong Country guy than I am a Banjo-Kazooie guy.
Oh,
High
interesting.
art.
So I think this is definitely more up my alley, but I also think that the formula has aged a lot better for Donkey Kong Country than it did for
So
Banjo-Kazooie.
you think this is a tighter game than the original Yooka-Laylee?
Yeah, and I also, when I asked the guys at Playtonic, I was at E3 after they announced it, they were like, I said like, oh, so is this like you guys like kind of like Yooka-Laylee was recapturing the magic you guys had with Banjo-Kazooie? Is this what they're doing with Donkey Kong Country? And they're like, oh yeah, but we also took influence from other games, and they specifically mentioned Tropical Freeze, which is really weird because that's like their
Yeah.
series that continued on without them.
Right.
Oh, that's
right.
interesting,
The
yeah.
retro game.
And it definitely you feel a lot of Tropical Freeze in this game. Like it plays like a much more modern Donkey Kong Country, which is how Tropical Freeze plays. Like, and I don't know, it just it looks and plays a lot like that.
So you like it?
I do.
Is the music by friend of the show Grant Kirkhope or friend of the show David Wise?
I think it's by both.
Is that right? Yeah,
I
because
believe they got both
collaborated
of
on the
them.
last one again as well. That's very interesting.
But yeah, and all the levels are 2D, and then there's like an isometric overworld that you're going around, and it's surprisingly fun to like unlock the next areas because it's like you have to keep exploring, and like there's little puzzles you have to solve to unlock like the next like hub area.
Yeah.
And then also the whole hook of the game is the Impossible Lair is like the final dungeon that you have to go through, and it's just this really long, like super difficult level that's like has boss battles in the middle of it, and there's no checkpoints whatsoever.
Are there mine cards?
I don't know. I haven't gotten to any yet, but there were in the first one.
Yeah.
So this one, you can go to the Impossible Lair right from the beginning.
That's awesome.
And you have to. I think like the very first scene is like, all right, go try. And like I beat my first attempt. I beat the boss battle in the very beginning, and then it was just immediately killed.
Well, are you leveling up if you choose to go back later?
So each level that you beat in Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair gives you a bee. So the whole story is you're rescuing these bees that were captured, and each bee that you rescue gives you an extra hit in the Impossible Lair. So like you get 2 hits as Yooka-Laylee. The first one, Laylee the bee goes, or Laylee the bat goes flying around, and you can try to like catch her and get her back like Yoshi kind of in Mario World. Or, if she flies away, you're down to your last hit, and you also lose like certain abilities. Like you can't do like a ground pound, or you can't do like the twirl jump that gives you a little extra distance.
Right.
But then so you only get those 2 hits, like 2 in retrieving. But every bee that you get for completing levels, you get an extra hit in the lair. So you kind of have to determine how many levels you want to beat in order to
Right.
like beat that final level.
Do you think that structure was inspired by Breath of the Wild?
Maybe.
Is it
But
one of
maybe
the rare
not.
post Breath of the Wild influenced games?
I don't know.
That'd
It's
be
not the
interesting.
first inspiration that I went to with this game.
Okay, but just the
maybe.
idea of like, you can go
You
to
can go,
Ganon at
yeah,
any
if you
point,
want,
but if
yeah.
you want to progress and get some
yeah, I like
little
that.
helpful things. Speaking of Breath of the Wild inspired, do you guys want to stay here for 1 second?
I
be right back.
cannot wait. I cannot wait.
Speaking of weights, I've been checking out Ring Fit Adventure, which this is why I like Game Informer is like, remember that trailer a while ago where it's like, oh, a new way to play a fitness game on the Nintendo Switch, and just out of the blue. I feel like Ring Fit Adventure showed up in the office out of the blue, where it's not out yet. It's not out for a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that.
It's weird.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I guess this thing is
Here it
here
is.
in my hands that I just watched that video for, which feels like last week. So
And when we first got it, you were so weak you couldn't even pick it up.
that's
but
right.
Now,
That's right. Now I've become basically the Captain America bulk up sequence. That's what Ring Fit Adventure has done to my body.
You're practically immortal now.
So if you don't remember this thing, it is a fitness game for the Switch that feels very inspired by Wii Fit. It feels a lot like that vein, developed by Nintendo itself, except the core is worked out. The core is, it's all based on this ring, this plastic ring, and they, throughout the course of the game, make you do different exercises just using this smallish hula hoop.
Do you ever put it between your knees and squeeze?
Not yet. But
What?
So there's an adventure in this game, right? It has like a whole story, and it's bizarre to see like Nintendo Treehouse level localization put towards fitness adventure. So it's like, oh, you're fighting Drago, and that character is called Ring, and they have this shady backstory where Ring betrayed Drago, and now he's this huge dragon that works out all the time. And you're working through this adventure, and you get into like random battles in between the normal levels where you're just kind of like running around, and you run by literally running in place because you have also the other Joy-Con is strapped to your leg. So it's a lot of running in place for this game. But as you're running and progressing, then you're getting into random battles, and the way you do damage in an RPG-like setting is you choose what workout routine you want to do. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do squats, or I'm going to do this move here, something like that, or I'm going to sit down and do this weird thing. And then whatever you choose, you do the reps there, and every time you do it, it takes down the enemy's health like it's an attack. But because of that, like, there's a lot of whittling down health bars slowly, but it's all just a ruse to get you to work out, right? I feel like I buried the lead. I think Ring Fit Adventure is very cool.
Oh, really?
I really liked it. Yeah.
it's like gameplay wise, it seems neat enough to like, I'm kind of into it.
Yeah.
So-
yes, I mean, simple things like you aim the stupid ring down and you squeeze it to make puffs of air come out. You can aim it anywhere and you can like attack enemies like that. Or you aim it down and do the puff, and you hold it down like that, and you do like a hover.
Ooh.
So there's like little platforming obstacles
Okay.
like that. Or you can stretch it, and then you suck things in. So there's also like coins around the environment that you can like suck in around you and stuff like that as you move throughout
So
it.
you just slide the Joy-Con right
and
in
you
there?
turn into a ring con. Is the
A ring
official
con. I thought it
name.
was a fit con.
Nope, it is the ring con, and
A
it's also the
retcon.
leg strap for the other thing. And the crazy thing is you can't cheat the system. Like I was doing like, I don't know, some leg movement where you put your legs up towards your chest. I don't work out much. And I was like, okay, well, these movements, it'll be exactly the same. So I'm going to slip the leg strap off and just move it with my hand. Somehow the Switch knew, and it didn't register
always
in the
knows.
game. It always knows. And there's crazy stuff too. Like you can hold your finger over the Ring-Con IR sensor on the Joy-Con, and it'll measure your heart rate.
What?
So it'll like measure your heart rate after each exercise
How can
if
this
you'd like
be?
it to. It's confusing. Also, secretly, one of the most interesting things about this is it has this weird system, and I didn't even know that this thing was electronic, but apparently it is, because you have what's called multitask mode, where you can turn your Switch off, and even when it's off, you can have a Joy-Con in the ring, and you then press in on the analog stick. It registers and syncs with the Ring-Con and makes a noise, and then while you're like watching a show or doing anything else around the house, it registers and makes a little noise. If you push it in or stretch it out, it'll make a different noise.
Okay.
And so you can just do that while you're watching a show or do like this cool move here. And if you do it up to 500 times, then it'll max out. You can only do 500 per day. And then the next time you boot up the game, it'll give your character experience because it's all this RPG. And it's just like a weird way to level up your character while you're not even playing the game.
This isn't technology, it's wizardry.
Straight wizardry.
Oh my gosh.
It's
That sounds neat.
Understand.
I think it is cool just to see a Nintendo level production for this thing. And it's weird though that it's a fitness thing and it doesn't star the Wii Fit trainer.
So what?
Just especially from Smash, like the
Why
Wii Fit
abandon
trainer.
that?
Yeah, exactly. You could make a cool story mode with a character that people like so much more now because of the Smash integration.
So when you're comparing it to the Wii Fit board and Labo, what's going to
Yes.
take up more space in storage once you never use this again?
This will take up less space than Labo. That's for damn sure.
How sore were you after your first day using this?
You know what? It's stupid. It's a stupid little ring, but like there's some activities that'll really take it out of you. There's even stuff like there's a series of mini games as well that you can choose from the main menu as well because it's like an adventure mode, which is at least 13 chapters. I think it's more than that. But there's also mini games, and like one of them's like you're in a parachute going down like this. You have to hold the ring con way above your head, and then you squeeze it in and like can then steer your parachute. Like you squeeze it into inflate.
That would be hard.
But you
But
have
it's
to keep
hard
it-
when you squeeze it in and then have to like lean it back to go
There's a
back
s-
to collect coins. It'll really do something.
There's a
man.
surprising amount of resistance in that ring.
Yeah.
Is there enough to this game where you think you'll be interested in it in a few weeks, or do you feel like after a week you're like,
That's the thing. I mean, it's very easy when it's delivered to your office. Like, oh, I guess I'll check it out, right? And I played it with my girlfriend last night who plays no video games. And she's like, if this was in the house, I think I would use it. Like, you know, especially during the winter months, like I do workout routines based on YouTube videos. It feels just like a more fun
okay,
version of
you
that.
work out.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? We're just like, if you want to have a kind of fun, gamified way to get into basically yoga, it's a lot of yoga stances, right? It seems cool.
Well, that's why I was like, if they continue to support it, that'd be cool. But if it's just like what you get in the box is it, and there's no additional content, I feel like you'd get bored eventually, right?
Yeah, they have like a basic thing in the menu where it's like, oh, okay, you can just do sets separate from the adventure mode, but as long as there's a way to keep leveling up the adventure mode for a while, or even just the mini games, like the ones that I played were decent. Like one of them is like, okay, you move the ring con up and down like this, and you try and match the shape of a pot on some wet clay, and you squeeze it in to like make the pot more narrow. And so the
Whoa.
clay is like slowly being built up, which doesn't sound that hard, but when you're squatting and also reaching out fully and squeezing this thing, it's
That's
like,
cool.
this is a fun game, and I am surprisingly sweaty at the end.
It'd be cool
Maybe-
if they like had some update to like Dragon Quest, and it's like, here,
Yeah.
while you're doing like battles, you have to do this workout thing. But You're
Right.
still playing the actual game. Like,
Right.
if they kept doing updates of actual games to incorporate stuff like this,
Right.
I'd be into that.
For sure. Yeah, I think just the Nintendo level charm over this thing is the most impressive part. Even like, okay, the main character or the guide is called Tip with 2 P's, right? And you're starting in the land of Beginia, and then like on the loading screens, it'll say, hey, fun fact, next time you eat a meal, start with your vegetables. It's just like fun, weird jokes along the
Okay.
way.
So
I
the
might be the
meat
next
is
person to
dessert.
take this back.
I think you should check it out because Shay, you're like the fittest guy around, man.
No.
That's not true. You could wear this as a belt. You're so
Yeah,
svelte.
you're so
we
healthy.
fit.
Honestly, though, Shay,
it.
come on, who is more healthy in the office than you,
You.
Nobody.
other than me? I don't think anybody.
No, Shay is very in shape. I would love for you to try it because, to be fair, like I don't have a Fitbit. I like gamifying exercise is not something I think I've ever really done. I never even really played Wii Fit, so I'm coming from a very rookie perspective, right? But I was really impressed by this thing.
Yeah.
Catch, it's $80.
Good boy.
No. But if you want a reason to work out a little bit and you don't mind running in place a lot, I think Ring Fit Adventure is kind of cool.
And you can't even use this as a Mario Kart wheel.
That's true. That's true. Oh, you should hear the sounds it makes though. When
I
it's
can't
When
wait.
it's in multitask mode, it's so satisfying. Ring Fit Adventure, everybody. Very fun. Oh my God, we've talked a lot. Should we move on to emails?
Yes.
Here we go.
Let's do it.
And welcome back to the Informer Show. We now have Leo out of the booth.
Thank you.
Wow. And who do we have in there? Is that Alex? Oh, Alex the intern. Welcome, sir. Thank you. You might remember him from such segments as Call of Duty Modern Warfare beta impressions and Link's Awakening. So, you know, write in some fan mail.
He's been around a while.
Hell yeah. Also, the other goons are here. Just to follow up on that thought, just in case you're curious, Ring Fit Adventure comes out October 18th. That's when everybody can get in shape, finally. You can't run in place in your apartment until October 18th, ladies and gentlemen.
Watch me.
So podcastinginformer.com is where people send in emails, dares, trivia, feedback, thoughts, things they find funny, things they find interesting about video games and beyond. Podcastinginformer.com. We choose our absolute number one favorite email and then put a pin in the big board where they're from. Right, Brian Shea?
Right.
What kind of emails are you hoping for, man?
Hoping for some fun prompts that will make us put on our thinking caps.
Games.
Games. There are 2 games on this week's
Ooh.
episode, Ben
Yeah.
Reeves.
That's all I
One
need.
is better than the others.
Well, that's probably true.
Here we go. First email's from Captain Clown. No address given. Very suspicious. Ooh, the Joker's in the house here. Spooked out. Dear Hanson Man and the G-Funks. Hello. Last of Us Part 2 theories. Ahoy. So Ellie's girlfriend gets taken captive, and Joel ends up showing up to help save her. This is all early game stuff. Ben Reeves, you've actually played Last of Us Part 2.
That's right. I've played the game.
When you rescue her, things will go wrong, and they murder Joel in front of Ellie, is his theory. And then Joel later on is just in Ellie's mind.
Yeah. We kind of talked about that.
About, the
On the
conspiracy
podcast.
theory
Yeah.
about Joel being dead the entire time. Since recording last week's podcast, I've really had some second thoughts, and maybe it's because about this magazine. No, just about like The Last of Us Part 2 overall, because like they released a video that's kind of inside making the demo of Last of Us Part 2, and in that, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but Neil Druckmann, he's like, look, don't worry everybody, we're not spoiling anything. And so I am more in the camp that they're trying to be misleading with that gunshot in the last trailer. I will now put money, if anybody wants to take my bet, that that's them killing Tommy and that her girlfriend betrays her.
Oh,
and
that'd be
that's
interesting.
where the hate comes from.
Betrays her.
Yeah, and is secretly with this other group. Like she
Okay.
grew up with this renegade group that we saw break the arms in the earlier trailer.
I wouldn't be
look
surprised if
happy.
there was some kind of twist they're holding back because it just feels like so obvious.
Yeah,
And it feels like, I don't know, Naughty Dog's better than that, I think.
I think so.
I could also see them going for having a villain that you have more of a relationship to this time. The first one kind of didn't really have a villain besides in the winter season specifically.
There's David. I'm gonna eat you. Oh, I'm in the kitchen and I'm Trey Parker.
Yeah, I was going to say that's Trey Parker. I'm sorry.
All right, Leo, what do you think? Is that a good bet?
That's a good bet.
I think
I
the
feel like
villain-
that's more likely.
The villain in The Last of Us was humanity, if you think about it.
Shut up.
Okay.
Shut
No.
up, you're hurting Leo's brain because it's so smart.
Not ready for that.
Let's see. Justin writes in and says, hey, GI crew, in your humble opinion, what do you think are the chances of games such as The Last of Us 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and Ghost of Tsushima being playable on next-gen hardware without a secondary purchase? Maybe you'll be able to put your PS4 disc in your PS5 and see the game at its best settings.
Didn't they already say that?
It is confirmed to be backwards compatible.
But you're saying an optimized version? Oh,
That's
none.
the twist.
Oh, the
I
optimized
think they'll
version.
charge you for that.
100%. Like, look at what GTA 5 did, and it's the greatest selling game ever.
Yeah.
Here's one thing I've learned. Video game companies like money.
Money.
They like to taste the money.
Yeah, especially I think the interesting case here is Last of Us Part 2. Because, Leo, I'm curious what you thought about this, but I thought it was interesting. Them just messaging last week like, hey, we were originally creating multiplayer for Last of Us Part 2. It kind of got too big and we needed to prioritize development on the campaign. So that is now going to be a separate release or something different down the road. That would be a very smart move, is to release the PS5 version, business-wise, not consumer-wise. Release the PS5 version of Last of Us Part 2 now with multiplayer.
But would they really take a page out of Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and release battle mode? Come on.
Oh, I think it's a little bit like that, right? Or I think also,
it'd be a Lost Legacy situation.
Yeah.
Where it's its own thing.
and that is towards the early stages of the PS5, just like a multiplayer only Last of Us. I
Yeah.
think that'd be awesome.
Lost Legacy was underrated, I think.
I would be surprised because they would want the big install base of the PS4, right? They would want to launch multiplayer on there.
No,
You wouldn't think so?
when they could, no. I mean, enough people are going to buy PS5. It's not like they're worried about, oh no, we could have twice the install base at launch with the PS4. What do they
Well, you
care?
can have both.
Okay.
But also, very likely that they could have cross-platform multiplayer together.
Yeah, it's kind of
that
like
would be
GTA. It's like you
fascinating.
sell it 1 year on old systems, and then people buy it again the next year. But if you release them at the same time, not as many people will buy it twice.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So what's the most likely scenario, do you think, Reeves?
I think you'll have to buy it twice.
Last of Us with multiplayer in the PS5 version?
I think the multiplayer thing will be its own thing.
You think so?
I think Lost Legacy.
What if it's
situation.
free to play?
Could be possible. Leo, what would you monetize? You've played a lot of Last of Us multiplayer. You love it.
I do love it. Yeah,
Rips.
I was so bummed when before they announced it was still coming, when they had only announced it's not in Last of Us 2.
Yeah,
But-
that's a real bummer.
They could monetize a lot. There were hats, there were masks.
No. Brandon from Appletown, Wisconsin says, simple question. What games have you been really hyped for, only to be totally crushed on how crappy it was? Mine was Borderlands. Interesting. I never cared
The
for the
first
series. Yeah. I started and never passed level 10 on the other 3 games. They always look great in the trailers, but never made me keep wanting to go back. But Borderlands 3, who doggy? I can't stop playing it.
Ooh, doggy.
Interesting. What a twist.
Mine was Crackdown 2.
doggy.
I reviewed that one. And I was like, man, this is not. I love the first one, and back then I was like looking forward to the second one a lot,
Yeah.
and it was not good.
And the third one?
I did actually just play that. I would say
really?
it's better than the second one.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
I pitched.
Tony Hawk 5?
Tony Hawk 5.
I think that if you look back at an old podcast, I was saying that it wasn't as bad as everyone was saying,
Oh, really?
but at the same time, it was not very good.
Right. I can dig it.
I got Assassin's Creed 3. I was very excited.
Ooh, that's a good
that's-
answer.
that's kinda
Sitting there
good.
watching the download is how excited I was to play it, and then to get into that prologue after that, trudging through the snow for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt Miller
Slow
gave it a
build.
9.5. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Slow build, slow middle as
Game
well.
of the generation.
Bit of a slow end.
Yeah, but
And
other
that
than
final
that-
scene where you're running over explosions and stuff, that was cool.
That's interesting. Remember when you're like shooting the cannons and George Washington's like, on the right, Connor.
So badass. So my fantasy.
where he's like on the desk after they signed the declaration of Lyndall Pinlands.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was really fun.
Little opinions.
Jimmy P from Corona, California says, "Hey, controller smudgers. Oh. Everyone has heard of a game not living up to its mountains of hype. Case in point, previous question. But my question to you all is, has there ever been a game and a time in which a game's mediocre or low reception has made you enjoy a game way more than expected? For example, I just gotten around to playing Gears of War 4 in lieu of the recent Gears 5 release, and I found it to be the series' best when upon release. And today I remember fans at the time saying it was not a Gears game.
What?
You know fans. Yeah, I guess like the mediocre thing kind of elevating your enjoyment level.
Yeah.
For me, it was like years down the road playing Spore for the first time.
Oh,
And was like, what? People were angry about this? Like, this thing's awesome. What a fun thing.
come on.
Yeah, I think that sometimes this isn't exactly what they're talking about, I don't think, but sometimes when I'm playing a game and I love it and it's getting mediocre reviews, I feel like I need to
Yes.
champion it more. you know?
Mr.
Like,
Shadow
I
of the
need-
Tomb Raider over here.
Right. I need to love it more outwardly because they're not getting enough the love that I think they deserve.
Yeah.
You know?
I hear
Sounds
ya.
like my life.
Yeah.
Kyle
That's why
from-
I'm always talking about Brian Shea.
That was going to be my answer. Is Brian's life Yeah, more fun than you think?
Kyle from, look at this saucy one, Mississauga, Ontario here, and I just recently noticed that many Sega games are getting revived in ways either long-awaited or bizarre. Super Monkey Ball is coming to home consoles after a 9-year break with Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. That's a remake.
I really wish it was
A new-
deluxe.
oh, sure.
If they were going to remake one or a new one. But
Yeah.
yeah, it makes me so
Or
upset.
2 on the GameCube. That was so fun.
Well, I mean, deluxe is 1 and 2, right?
Oh, is
All
that
the
right?
levels.
Oh, there we go. Also, Choo Choo Rocket gets its first official sequel with Choo Choo Rocket Universe and Apple Arcade. Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2 are getting remade for home consoles. House of the Dead 1 or 2 are also getting remade. I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
Space
either.
Channel 5 VR, that's true. Streets of Rage is getting that sequel after 25 years. Sega has clearly gone mad when it has come to reviving their old IPs, so I ask you, informers, what long dormant Sega franchise should come out of the shadows?
You didn't mention Shenmue, which we already
Oh,
talked
yeah,
about
that's
on the
right.
podcast. But
Leo, should we talk about Shenmue again?
yeah. You guys want to hear all
I
about
don't know
it?
if you got the point.
Let's play that back.
You ever met Yu Suzuki?
I have.
Nice guy.
Okay, what franchise? What IP? What are we talking about here?
Well, I was going to mention Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is
The RPG
a
thing?
different game, but it's the best game that Sega's ever made.
Really? Number
Yeah.
one Sega game?
I think it's the number one
That's a
Sega
very
game of all
interesting
time.
take.
They should bring that back, and it's a really good game. Skies of Arcadia, we talked about.
Oh, that's right.
Like a couple weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, that's so primed.
It's a
Yeah.
really good franchise.
That's a very good answer.
There was an in-game arcade game in Yakuza Kiwami, I believe, where you had these bug girls fighting each other, and you had the little cards with different bug girls on them. They could
Bring
that
Bug
back.
Girl back.
Come on. What are you scared of, Sega?
Cowards!
Come on.
I'm going to say, and bear with me here, the Sonic the Hedgehog series, not Sonic series, because we got like Forces and we got all those other games, but I want a Sonic the Hedgehog
Leo,
5.
I'm going to lose it.
Hanson, you said he wouldn't talk about this. That's the only reason I agreed to do emails.
Agreed to be cool, and he's not being cool.
He's using his platform.
Yeah, this is a platform. He doesn't respect what we're trying to do. He's making a mockery of the show.
I'm sorry, Brian. What were you saying?
Nothing. It's not important.
No,
They
I wanna
made
hear
Sonic
what
the
you're-
Hedgehog 4, and that was a
Well,
turd factory.
It was awful.
Yeah.
But like now that Sonic Mania
Turd
has
factory
given
zone.
us the blueprint for how to make a good
Shut
new
up!
Sonic.
Shut up! Shut up!
You
I tried
just
to defend
have
you,
to shut
but
up.
Come on.
You have to shut up. Oh my God.
Or Sonic and
Factory
Knuckles too.
zone.
Oh, hold on. Sonic and Knuckles. That'd be cool if they brought that back.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Reeves.
Yeah,
you
I
should
just
write an
thought of it.
opinion piece
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that,
totally.
bro.
This
The
Reeves guy's
click-on
actually
technology.
really good. I actually really like him.
You told me he was dumb, but he's proven to be a
What if they
genius.
stack
it
two
back.
discs on top of each other?
Whoa!
Mm-hmm.
I love this guy.
Can I kiss him?
Yeah, kiss him.
I just want somebody to
This
kiss
is
me
going to
right
go
now.
well and won't have to be edited out. There it is.
Cut that out.
Andrew Flanagan from Riverside, California writes in with a doozy of a dare.
Oh.
Is anybody willing to raise their hand on this dare? Leo Vader, I dare you to call your parents and ask them to tell an embarrassing story about you on air.
On air. Oh, amazing. This could be good.
I don't have my phone on me. It's charging upstairs. Also, I've already had my mom on the podcast in the past.
But if you were going to call her and say, tell an embarrassing story, what story would she tell?
Oh, the time I peed in my... No, I don't have nothing.
Peed in my
in your
mouth?
mouth?
Peed in my mouth. All babies in the womb pee in their mouth.
Through
right?
your insides?
Yeah, that's
Is
right.
that how that works?
Now, Leo, who are you calling?
My mommy.
Do you have to call her mommy?
Yeah. Hey, Mom, it's Leo.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. We're doing a podcast here at Game Informer in downtown Minneapolis. I was...
Never heard of it.
That's fine. Somebody wants me to call you and have you tell an embarrassing story about me. Do you have any locked and loaded?
About you, like...
Pee pee poo poo encouraged.
How embarrassing do you want it to be?
10 out of 10.
nuts.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
It's not very embarrassing. I can tell you when that's embarrassing.
Doesn't sound like
but
a 10 to
not very
me.
embarrassing. Is that all right?
Sure, go nuts.
Okay. Are you calling me now already, or are you going to call me later?
Yeah, you're on right now.
Oh, shoot. I didn't even, get ready for this.
Put on your
Let
makeup.
me go change my clothes.
Okay.
Damn it, she's funnier than me.
Oh, no.
Okay, I know, kind of embarrassing. Leo, you would not often, but more than once or twice or 3 times,
A lady.
wear your sister's pants to school, and they were 10 sizes too big for you. So then you would come home, and the gym teacher would have a rope around your waist for a belt.
Why did you do that?
How old was he?
I remember another one that's even better, though.
Please.
This was one of my favorites.
Great.
Okay, you were in first or second grade. You might remember this. And you wore your boots to school and you were playing, and they were all full of snow. And your winter boots. And your teacher said, "Go out to the drinking fountain and clean out your boots." And she wanted you to empty the snow out of them. And you went up there and you filled them up with water. And then she came back and she was mad at you.
Was it a joke?
And I was like, "You told him to clean out his boots."
Yeah. I didn't know how different materials worked.
So you were trying to rinse them?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So you just brought it over?
Amelia Bedelia.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, Mrs. Vader.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Please.
Oh, yes.
The show's yours.
Can we swear?
Yes.
Okay, this is first grade, and Leo comes out and admits that he was sent to the principal's office. I think the first day of first grade, or it might have even been kindergarten. And you were 6 when you were telling me the story, maybe 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "What did you do?" And he said, "I called someone a bad name, a bad word." And I said, "Well, what did you call him?" And he said, "I can't say it." And I said, "Can you spell it?" And he said, "Okay." And he said, ASSWHOLE. And I couldn't. I didn't laugh, but God, I was laughing.
First day of first grade?
Yeah.
That's
'cause I was
badass.
so proud of you because you could spell really good, but then also call somebody the whole ass.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for revealing Leo's whole ass on the podcast today, Mrs. Vader.
All right, bye. I'm glad you called it. Love you, Leo.
Love you too. Thank you.
Man.
Bye.
That was very
Wow.
ass wholesome.
Now, since we lost Tim Turry, could she be available as a co-host?
Oh, that'd be
Think
great.
she'd be down for
Probably.
that?
Just keep calling her every day. Don't even tell her.
Scale of 1 to 10, how embarrassed were you on any of those stories?
They made me sound pretty cool, honestly.
Yeah, for the audio
That's the
listeners,
thing.
Leo is red as a tomato.
I have more
About the
respect for
burst.
Leo now.
It's a sunburn.
Thank you.
Damn it, Leo's cool. Here's a natural transition.
Not as cool as Leo's mom.
That's true. Jordan Blaney. It's pronounced Blaney from Omaha, Nebraska. His last name's Blaney. Anyways,
Are you making fun of this guy?
Mr. Blaney
I was
writes
waiting
in.
for the punchline there.
Nope,
This
he
guy
writes
doesn't
in.
work for us. You can't make fun of him.
Oh, I'm sorry,
like
Jordan.
Brian.
Yeah. He writes in. He says, "Where are all the Atlas games on Switch? I know Shin Megami Tensei was announced back during the original Switch announcement trailer, but we have heard nothing since. Where's Etrian Odyssey or Radiant Story Remaster or anything?
Or Persona 5.
It is absurd. Like I was playing Smash the other day with Joker, and there was like that reminder of, oh yeah, they haven't even announced that Persona 5 is coming. Clearly, it is if Nintendo
I
got
don't
that
know,
as
man.
a character.
Is Banjo-Kazooie coming to Switch?
That's a good question.
Yes.
Exactly.
Is that an
Probably.
Atlas game?
Yeah.
It probably is actually, right? Probably some port at some
I don't
point.
think that we're ever going to get it on Switch.
You would put money that we're never going to get Persona 5 on Switch? That's them.
I don't know if ever. Let's see.
All right,
Okay,
exactly.
2
yeah,
years.
all
I'll give
right,
a
all right.
2-year window.
Hey, shake on it.
Okay, do you want to put money down?
Put something on it.
I will put
Steak dinner.
$10.
A date with Leo's mother.
Okay.
And shake.
A date with
So,
Leo's mother.
Winner gets a date with my mom.
No, the loser has to go on a date with your mommy.
I think the loser.
He's calling her
Leo,
back.
Oh, gosh, oh.
I need you to pick me up early today.
with 30 boots. Yeah, Shin Megami Tensei 5, that's such an interesting case because that was the Switch like big outing, big showcase, and not a word. It's crazy, right? Although Mr. Blaney, Tokyo Mirage Session, Atlas game, that port's coming from the Wii U. So
It is.
what do you think of that?
Was Catherine a Atlas game?
Yeah, that's
was
only
that
PS4.
Did that come to Switch?
No,
I guess not.
it's only PS4. I think the
boy.
full body edition. Yeah.
Ooh, good boy.
Catherine with an F as in effed up. Justin from Austin, Texas. He says, "Hey, Ninja."
Justin.
I'm sorry. Yes, Shay has a great point. Justin says Ninja was recently on Jimmy Fallon, and when asked about his move to Microsoft/Mixer, he said, "I want to try to get involved with the release of new games and possibly teasing things and pushing out a lot of early access information."
Plus, they gave me a lot of money.
Yeah. With E3 attempting to curate more celebrity and influencer moments, do you think it's inevitable that Ninja will be on stage at the Xbox press conference demoing Halo Infinite on Scarlet?
Yes.
I'm surprised he hasn't been on stage before, honestly.
Oh, even before
At
this-
an E3. doing
before they
something.
purchased his soul.
He
Yeah.
was at the Game Awards.
Yeah, there
With
we
that
go.
Did
Muppet.
the skit with,
The Fortnite
Muppet.
guy.
He was on The Masked Singer. Did you see that?
Yeah.
What is
He
that?
sang Old Town Road.
Celebrities sing with big extravagant costumes on, and then they reveal that they're a celebrity. pretty
Oh,
much.
Yeah, they
is
come
it
out
always-
like the celebrity judges have to try to pick who the celebrity in the costume is.
Oh, that's funny. Do they ever reveal who they are and just like a smattering of applause? People are like, who is that?
No, they're very strict. It has to be a celebrity.
Oh, a
Yeah, like
celebrity.
Ninja.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think absolutely. The fact that like he just played so much Halo in his past, like that's part of the thrill. Who else is going to demo the game? Random 343 employee number 5? That'd be better. But realistically, views-wise, they're going to try and think that's a cool thing to do.
Will he
And what-
come out in a Master Chief outfit?
and then
and then
sing Old
take-
Town Road.
Yeah. And slowly take
That
his
just
helmet
becomes
off.
his bit.
That's amazing. Or maybe Master Chief in Halo Infinite will take his helmet off and he is Ninja. They
Oh,
got
God.
the likeness finally.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the outrage? That reminds me of a song. Hit it, Mario O'Donnell.
Yeah, that song.
I've been meaning to ask.
Road. Old Town Road.
Old Town Road.
Take me home.
Old Town Road. Halo Infinite. Okay, Voy from Shakopee, Minnesota. He says, "Hey, Ben and crew. I just listened to last week's podcast, and in the topic of in-game advertising, I had something interesting to contribute. If you played the NBA 2K series, this game is all about in-game advertising. To get new shoes, you have to go to a Foot Locker. New clothes, you go to the NBA store, just like we do in real life. You use Gatorade to give your player a boost.
Yep.
At the
Just like
end
real
of
life.
games during the interview, you can shout out Gatorade to earn virtual currency.
What?
And also you can
Isn't that
buy.
amazing?
Wait a sec. This game should be free.
Oh, really?
It should be.
Shout out Gatorade.
At the end of games during the in the local hub, Reese's Cereal sponsors an event where all the courts are Reese's colored, and there's a giant cereal box in the neighborhood. Twitch and GameStop both advertised on the pre-game desk throughout the year. Oh, like the announcer desk. So in-game advertising is definitely here and not going anywhere. That feels gross, but it also feels like sports. So like, where's that
sports.
line?
Yeah.
It's just walls of ads around the entire
But
arena.
shouting out
exactly.
Gatorade to get money
Yeah.
is the grossest
That's
thing I've ever
very
heard
silly.
At the same
in
time,
my life.
I went to the grocery store the other day, and there was a head of lettuce that had the picture of the Hulk on it.
Yeah.
It's like the advertising's like everywhere these days.
Yeah,
it's just, and it's like I don't get it. Why lettuce?
Because his head is green. It's a head of lettuce. It's
well,
green.
well,
never
for
mind.
Force Awakens, they had like BB-8 on the lettuce and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They had.
that kind of makes sense, but also it's lettuce.
I bought Captain Marvel bananas earlier this year.
Oh, really? How were they?
They're fine. They're
cool.
banana-y.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I heard them.
Gatorade.
McDonald's.
Oh, I don't know my wallet.
Remember that patent that about saying the name of a company to get an ad to stop playing?
Yeah, that was a PlayStation patent.
That's
where you'd
cool.
stand up and yell the word McDonald's. So funny.
Swear your allegiance to McDonald's to get this ad to go.
You should have
Cross
iPhone
your
games
heart,
that do
yeah.
that, so you're out in public having to yell into
Yeah,
your microphone.
the Kinect can even tell you if you have your hand on a Bible. Don't BS us, dude.
Hand
Remember
over
that-
your heart.
Yeah,
Remember that part of the movie Her?
yeah.
We had to start yelling McDonald's.
No, but that sounds fun.
It seems like there'd be something funny there.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you said. It seems like there would be something
Seemed
funny
like
there.
that would have been a funny thing to say.
We were kind of counting
Oh,
on you
hold
to
on.
deliver that.
Waiting.
No, this is much easier. Just pointing out when there's time to say something funny.
I'm gonna walk down a funny alley if anybody wants to stop me.
Somebody want to mug me in a funny way?
That's where the Wayne family was killed.
That's right. Oh, you're talking
was
about
funny.
the Blaney family? I don't know.
Yeah.
Blake.
Hey, well, that would have been a
hilarious
good time to
name,
say
by the
something
way.
funny, Hanson.
All right, guys. We're getting back on track.
Oh,
The
okay.
train's coming. We all have our tickets. Climb aboard the effing straight GI Show Express.
Choo-choo.
You ready? Here we go. Choo choo.
Come and ride the train.
And ride.
Gatorade.
No. Oh, what is this? Get off the train. Get off the train.
Yeah.
Alex, mute his mic. He's off the train.
Don't do it, Alex.
All right. We're serious train riders.
Yes.
No ticket. Wait. Does that mean I
Wait,
have
was
to
that
go?
a joke? I think you gotta go.
All right,
Oh,
go.
no.
Okay, all right. Next, you got to do the email. I'm off the train.
All right. Well, I don't know where you were. Was it this one?
Blake Kibbe.
Blake Kibbe. Hey, Ben and the gang. I think we all agree that games are, at least, can be art. But is there one game that can be considered the artiest? What is the Mona Lisa of games?
The Mona Lisa of games.
I
What
think
is-
the
are you
artiest
guys-
art, it's Mona Lisa.
Oh, is your mic back on? Would you like to make a serious answer?
answer?
So what is the Mona Lisa of art?
The Mona Lisa of art?
That's it. You're off the train.
Oh no!
Leo, you got to monologue this one.
The Mona Lisa of art is clearly the Vitruvian Man. Nothing like it. You know, I think, honestly, you can say What Remains of Edith Finch.
Oh,
That's kind of... It's a
What a
in
weird
terms
thing
of
to say.
in terms of beauty, but
yeah.
in terms of perfection, Rocket League.
Correct. That is correct. And also the wheels follow you wherever you go in Rocket League. Funny you bring up Edith Finch. A developer who worked on Edith Finch is coming up in the interview section coming up.
Didn't we already determine this was Alien?
Correct.
What? No. But seriously, what about Super Mario Brothers? Like the game that like all other games are judged by, right?
Are they?
Like, well,
That's right. When I'm reviewing a game, I say, "Is this better than Super Mario Brothers?"
Yeah.
When I
Yes,
look at
it
a
should
Game
be.
Informer cover, I say, is this better than the Mona Lisa?
and half the time, yes.
Yeah, over half.
Jim Boy Me Bob. Hello from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Not a funny name.
Not funny.
He's off the train.
Howdy, GI Crew. I just wanted to write in to say. That's funny. Just because I read it as I just wanted to write in to say I'm a boy, but that's not what it says. Just write in to say, I just wanted to write in to say I'm a twin boy with a twin sister that is 6 minutes older. I also have a brother a year younger, just slightly missing the perfect Game Informer sibling dynamic. No older sister. If there's any older sisters out there, should try and worm your way into this family from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so we can create the perfect family unit.
You can still adopt.
Oh, is that right?
I actually learned about this the other day. You can adopt people who are over 18. And it happens.
Are you
occasionally.
serious?
Yeah.
You could adopt me?
Would you like to be my son?
I'm interested in being your son.
What if you're the oldest child until you're like 12, and then you marry into a new family? Your parents marry into a new family, and
Yeah.
then suddenly you're the youngest kid because all the other kids got left behind.
Oh my god.
Do you think you'd be like guaranteed
Oh, you just
serial
blew
killer?
my mind.
Serial.
Have you seen the Joker?
No.
What happens?
What? Who's that?
It's the Persona guy.
He's a very serious
I
man.
don't like the sound of him.
Ryan Shaw writes in
It's close to my name.
saying eagle-eyed. That's true. Eagle-eyed viewers probably noticed a fade transition in last week's podcast. It's got me thinking. How often do you cut content out of the podcast and why?
What people actually wrote in about that?
Several
That's
people noticed
amazing.
that. No comment. Does Reeves make inappropriate jokes? Did someone spoil something that was upcoming, or did it not fit thematically? Yeah, we'll cut things out. It's nice, like, having 3 different cameras. It's pretty easy to cut every once in a while. Like, if there's, like, a tangent, forgot a train of thought, somebody is just thinking for a little bit before they start speaking. If
Yeah.
in the edit, I'll usually write down the time code, then check it. I'll write down time code trim ? And I'll go back and look at it. It's like, okay, that's an easy trim. I'll tighten this up a little bit, but not. There's probably averaging 1 cut an episode somewhere.
How often do you cut based on pace like that? Like not for any content reason, just because the segment was dragging?
I mean, throughout hundreds and hundreds of shows, because segment sucked and just like cut out like, this chunk here,
Sure.
like large chunks. It's probably happened 6 times.
And how much is this episode going to drive up that average?
Yeah, do you remember that tangent we went on Old Town Road? That's out of here.
Oh boy.
Stuff like that. Yeah, it's fun. That part right there, I should probably cut out. Let's see. Noel Sacramento says, Dear GI crew, what are your typical travel setups for gaming on long trips in planes and the waits in the airports? Not necessarily specific titles of games, more like platforms and peripherals. Also specifically, what is your Switch mobile setup like? Do you use a sleeve or a case?
I have a case.
Well, I've been traveling quite a bit this year. When I first started at Game Informer, it was a whole different world, man. Let me tell you. It was
Yeah.
a Vita and 3DS setup. Now it's an iPhone and Switch setup.
Oh.
Wait, you use your iPhone a lot on planes?
When I'm on a plane, but when I'm at the airport, which was
I
part
do
of the question. If
a
you
fair
listened,
amount. Yeah, no, like the Switch, I had a case that I really loved where it was like just a tight little wampeter that you'd like slide the Switch into. So it was like the Joy-Cons would still be exposed. It was kind of like leathery. Like it was really great because it was just so small and compact. But then recently, I'm so happy this person wrote in, Noel, because I've been raving about this Switch. I guess it comes with a case, but it's called Satisfy, like Satisfye, and it's just grips for your Joy-Con and the overall Switch to slide into, so that when you're holding the Switch in handheld mode, it feels like big, beefy things for your hands to grab onto, and it is so comfortable. It makes it like as comfortable as like a PS4 controller or something like that.
You like holding beef?
I love holding beef. I think it's more comfortable than like the basic dog head Switch controller. Like I just think it's great. It's like $25. It's
it's
revolutionized handheld Switch playing for
it's
me.
the texture of raw beef.
That's right.
I love that concept, but like when you're on a plane, I feel like I want to travel as light as possible and I don't want to like bring extra things.
For
Like,
sure.
is that annoying?
I haven't traveled on a plane with it yet, but I like it so much that I've just brought it around the house and stuff. Just walked up and down the street screaming about Satisfy.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Gatorade.
But the fact that it comes with a case and the case itself isn't that much thicker than like, the Breath of the Wild case or so many of those default Switch cases, that like I think it's totally fine. So quit judging.
I try to travel light when I travel for work, like bring just my backpack if I can, and the Switch usually ends up being very non-essential.
Really?
Wow.
So I usually just game on my MacBook, which I'm bringing anyway.
Oh, interesting.
And it has great battery life. It lasts a lot longer than the Switch does.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
I like playing it on a Mac if I can, but sometimes like I don't know if mine's just too big. Like when you're on a more cramped plane, like do you ever notice that like you can't get the screen all the way up and
No.
like type on the keys? Really? You never have that issue?
I get that all the
my-
time with my PC.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, we're not all flying first class, Leo.
Oh yeah, that's the problem. I should fly first class.
Yeah. I always buy the seat next to me out of pocket so I can
Just
set it
stretch
on
out
it.
your legs.
Yeah.
You've never had that problem.
No.
It's almost impossible for me to transcribe on a plane. Like if I'm coming back from like an interview.
Yeah.
Like it is
very
so
annoying.
hard.
Ward from Birmingham, Alabama. Hey, GI crew. Here's one. Hashtag just gamer things. What is the most ridiculous method or logic you've seen a game use to cut certain areas off during certain sections of the game? I'm also extending this question to when you reach the limits of a game world. I've always ran into invisible walls, burning cars, water. Alternatively, is there a way to believably reach the edge of a game world that doesn't break immersion? Even Breath of the Wild doesn't let you get too far. What is it with Breath of the Wild? Is it just mountains too high?
Well, I think there's also like a sandstorm that you can't go through.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Wait,
Red
so-
Dead does that too, where it's just like anytime you're on the border of the map, there is a mountain that you can't get over.
Right, which is, I think it's a fine method.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Wait, so what is the question? Just what's the
What's the most
artificial boundary?
ridiculous thing? What's the most
It's
noticeable
always weird
thing?
when it's like you're like a superhuman soldier and there's like a rock that you can't jump over.
Right, that always makes me laugh. Especially when you're able to jump over, but then there's an invisible wall above it. That's
Yeah.
always the silliest move.
A lot of horror games do, and other games, but it's just like the pile of furniture in the hallway. It's
Yeah.
like I could easily worm my way around that, but to this character, that's not an option for how to get out of this place.
I love
or
it
whatever.
specifically. I always think, I forget if it's in PUBG, but in so many games, like Naughty Dog games, like stairwells always make me laugh because it's always like, oh, no, there's a shopping cart on the stairwell. Can't get around. It's like, okay.
The one I love the most is when something eats you. Like if you're like swimming through water and
Oh,
like something
yeah.
comes and eats you.
That is great. Because you
wish-
always think you can find the limits of
Yeah.
it. Like, I'm going to push a little bit
Maybe
more.
if I jump out of the water at this right second, I can jump over it. but-
Right. Yeah, we need more things eating you on the edge of worlds.
That should happen like in the forest too. Like some bear should just run out and eat
Right.
you.
Or
Like,
if you try to like go across the Pacific.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
Dakota here from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Simple question. What's the most envious you have been of a fellow employee because of an assignment? Oh, I love this.
There was one time when Dan and Tim, not Dan, Cork and Tim, got to go drive tanks. Did you go on that, Hanson?
No, that was like
What?
Jason A. Striker's first week. It was like, here's the camera, have fun. And
Yeah.
I think he was a little bit overwhelmed.
It was this weird thing where like some guy who like has this company where he lets people drive tanks. It was like, hey, you guys are gamers. You drive tanks in video games. You should drive a real tank. And like they got to go and drive tanks, and like it seemed like a real fun thing. I was very
Yeah, the
jealous.
Sounds
video
awesome.
is definitely on our site if you search. I don't think it's on YouTube though. Yeah, that's a silly idea. I think of I kind of wanted to go on the Spider-Man trip, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I almost cried because I didn't get to go on that.
You should have cried.
Yeah.
I did cry.
You're
I
the
did
biggest
cry.
spider nut in the office, man.
I was very disappointed. It was a family trip that came up, and
Equally fun though.
I almost needed to adopt a new family because I almost skipped that trip.
I was a little jealous of your Outer Worlds trip, I think.
Ooh.
Oh, really? The kitty has claws.
Also, a couple of people get to go to E3 every once in a while. It seems like it'd be cool.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. I'm sorry, Leo. Oh, no.
It's Joe.
Oh, I haven't thought about that in a while.
You get to
That's
stay here and make
devastating.
cool videos.
Oh, yeah. No, I love it.
Yeah,
So-
we didn't get to be E3 Kings.
This isn't one that was while I was at Game Informer, but I've heard about it from Matt Miller. He got to go to Abbey Road Studios
That's right,
and play
yeah.
the Beatles rock band and then go backstage at a Paul McCartney show and ask him like 3 questions.
I think it was at E3
Yeah.
when Paul McCartney was about to
Okay.
come out on stage and deliver the worst stage performance of all time.
But still, he got to talk to Paul McCartney and then play at Abbey Road Studios.
Would you cry if you were playing Beatles Rock Band at Abbey Road Studios? I think I'd cry.
I'd get emotional.
I would
think.
hope we'd all get emotional, right?
Because you're thinking about the Spider-Man trip.
Exactly right.
Yeah, no, I'd be stoic.
Just
You've done a fine work on this.
a little bit of a stoic face and just hearing that classic rock band drum mat sound.
This is Abbey Road.
Yeah.
A little
It's
easy.
a room.
These songs are a little easy.
Well, that's dumb.
Ringo was a hack, huh? Turns out. Huh. Oh my gosh. Connor from Norfolk, Virginia here. Love the show and the people on it. I don't know which is better.
Boo.
What is with you being contrarian today, Jay?
I'm not.
Have you been grumpy?
Oh, no, I did it again.
See? What's going on? You angry? Do you guys ever notice, like, why was I acting? I think I was angry about something. I just wasn't aware about it.
Oh sure.
Like, especially like if I've been drinking, like, you know, I'm a happy guy when I'm drinking and stuff. But every once in a while, it's
The
like
darkness comes out with you when
No,
you
no,
drink.
no, not at all. But just every once in a while, it's
I
like
know.
that was a little bit of like an unnecessary
Yeah.
jab at that person.
Yeah.
Like, why did I do that?
I do.
Yeah.
I notice that about myself all the time.
Yeah.
And I hate it.
What do you think it is? Do you think you're a
a
little
lot-
pent up, angry about something?
Yeah, sometimes. But
Because
also,
your boots are so dirty.
but
Hey,
also,
what was up with that, dude?
So you're right.
That was unnecessary.
I'll
Right.
realize, oh, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten
Really?
in a while.
You're
yeah,
that
that is 90% of the time what it is.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, that's bizarre. Huh. Do you get cranky when you get hungry, Reeves?
Probably.
Huh.
I think it's more like when I get tired.
Oh,
when I get-
right. That's when you snap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like I don't have enough caffeine in my system.
Yeah. Don't talk to me till I've had my coffee.
Yeah.
So Connor from Norfolk says, which video game demo have you played the most? I don't know, sure. And
Tony Hawk.
which one was the most impactful in your decision to actually purchase the game or not? The demo I played the most was Star Wars Force Unleashed. That's interesting. Most impactful demo for him was Resident Evil 5. Yeah, number one demo.
I played a demo for the Prince of Persia, the original first remake. What
Sands
was
of
that,
Time?
like 12 years ago or something? Probably more than that. 15 years
Original
ago.
first remake?
Well, you know what I mean.
Sands
Not
of
the
Time?
original. Yeah, Sands of Time.
Okay, yeah.
The original first remake.
Oh my God, Reeves.
The first reboot. And I immediately went and bought that game. 'Cause
Yeah.
I loved it so much.
Wow. I mean, I would love if when I meet my maker, the first thing I would ask them is what demo have I spent the most time playing?
You've never met your parents?
What's that?
You've never met your parents?
No, do you know them?
No.
I was adopted by Reeves' family at a very
You
young
wanna call
age.
him really
Yeah.
quick?
And I
Tell him an
don't.
embarrassing story.
But it'd probably be like Jet Moto 2 or just like something very dumb for the PlayStation. But like Frequency, that demo I played the hell out of. Eco on PS2, but it's probably GTA 2 on PC. It's probably number one.
It's got to be a PS1 game for me because I got that system and immediately went to Pizza Hut because they had demo discs.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably like Matt Hoffman's BMX or whatever that was on that.
Yeah.
Did he
Also-
pass away?
No.
No. Stronger than ever.
Okay, never mind. Dave Mira?
Live strong.
No.
I think so.
It's-
Dave Mira's dead, right?
No.
I have no idea.
I think he might be.
The rally car guy died.
A lot of people have died.
Yeah.
Dale Hart?
Dale
Dale
Earnhardt. Yeah,
Earnhardt.
Dale Earnhardt did die.
Yeah, that's superhero.
Probably Guitar Hero 3 because I was so just stoked on Guitar Hero at the time, and like they released a Guitar Hero 3 demo with like 4 songs.
What were the songs? Do you remember?
It was
Old Town Road.
No, it was the Pat
When the Saints
Benatar
Go
song. It was Priestess, Lay Down. It was Rock You Like a Hurricane, and there was one other, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure I played that demo too.
But I played that probably like hours and hours waiting for Guitar Hero 3 to come out.
Yeah.
Most played, Skate 2. Partially because it had the full replay editor in it.
Oh,
like you could
wow.
export stuff, but you could dick around with the replay editor. It was super fun.
And now your career is being a replay editor.
Do you think that
true.
has anything to do with your career?
No.
Playing that game didn't.
No,
like,
I
send you
was
down a
already
path?
making vids at that point. I
Okay.
think.
Wait a second. I just realized I hacked the demo of Guitar Hero 3 so I could burn it on a CDR and put it in my Xbox 360
Leo,
before it was publicly available.
Leo, this podcast is going out to people who are litigious. Why doesn't he understand this?
And I was not done.
I know.
I was about to tell a really great story.
I was listening and I could tell your momentum was just building. And this guy had to interrupt you to broadcast his illegal acts.
You know what? Let's just pretend we're both fine and continue moving,
Okay.
even though we're both really mad.
Before I move on to the next email from Jack, which is a humdinger, Leo, do you want to continue your story?
Yeah, sure, man.
You know when I get angry?
Are you hungry right now? What's happening?
Skate 2, you could glitch out. It's stupid because I've already told this story before, too. So, but you can glitch out of the map in the Skate 2 demo.
Oh.
And you could explore the full Skate 2 map, except like half the roads just drop off into nothingness. So you got to stay on the sidewalk.
Oh,
and skate on the
fun.
parks and stuff.
Like
it
in
was
the
still
Old Town section?
Yeah.
That Old Town Road?
There was no Old Town Road in the demo.
Wow.
And you could, it was like a 30-minute timer still. So I just had to restart and glitch out of the map again and then keep
Oh,
doing
that's super
it.
fun.
But the one that influenced my decision the most for the game, Wet, I played the demo for that a bunch. Knowing nothing about it, I was like, wow, this is fun combat. I'm going to buy it. I
Wow.
love this game. And then I didn't buy it.
Oh, it's not too late. It's in the Game Informer Vault.
Oh,
is.
I could buy it from us.
Going out of business sale.
Jack from Pretoria, South Africa says, simple question, really. Do you think in future we'll see remakes of remakes or remasters of remasters or even remasters of remakes? Brr, my eyes are spinning.
Didn't we already get that with Resident Evil 2?
Resident Evil 1.
Or Resident Evil 1, yeah.
That was the remaster of the remake.
Oh, yeah.
I thought of that as well.
Yeah,
Are there
that's
any
good.
other cases? Is that going to be more and more common?
Has that ever happened with like? It feels like Street Fighter 2's been re-released so many times. They've
But there's
remade
never-
it.
We got Street
Well-
Fighter 2 and then Turbo HD or Super Turbo HD.
But has
came
that,
out.
I don't think like a higher res port of that.
Does Mario All Stars on Wii count? Because those were remakes of the original Mario
That's
trilogy.
a port. Though.
Well,
But
no,
didn't
they-
they were
up-res
up-res.
it?
They like redid the art. In a lot of
Interesting.
cases.
That is another
Yeah.
case. Please write into podcast@gameinformer.com for remasters of remakes or vice versa. I love this topic.
Looking forward, I
Last
bet
of Us 2, probably.
Oh, yeah.
I bet it'll keep happening though.
Why does he? Yeah, speaking of keep happening, why does he keep interrupting?
I don't think I'm going to be able to keep playing it cool.
I know. I understand. If you need to take some anger out, I can get you the ring fit, and you can just squeeze it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Go, Leo. Do you have anything else to add?
I don't even remember anymore, man.
But yeah, I imagine there'll be like the 4K build with all that stuff.
Yeah, Shadow of the Colossus, when we see that again, PS5 or whatever, they're definitely
Oh.
going to go off the remake since it was ground up. We're gonna
They
see an
say
upwards
it's
of that
ground up,
remake,
but
right?
it ain't ground up. That was so frustrating. I feel like I'm the only one on the mountaintop yelling because we interviewed the developers and they're like, it's
No, it
a
was from the
fusion.
ground up.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, it was.
No, it wasn't. But
don't
it
listen to
says
the
on the back of the
developers.
box that it was.
From
Yeah.
the ground up.
It says, I think it says from the ground up or something like that on the back of the box.
Or something like that.
it's that type of
does say
phrasing.
that.
Yeah.
It's like organic, where it doesn't mean anything. You can just say it.
Right. True.
Or happy.
True. Jonathan from Lawrence, Kansas writes in, oh, that's where Dan's from, I think, or something.
I have a buddy there.
Is it Dan?
Dan, if you're listening, call me.
As of late, there's been a tad bit of drama. Did you hear about this? In the fighting game community over a commentator that said that fighting games aren't any harder to learn than other online-based games like shooters like Overwatch, strategy games like League of Legends, and yet general perception seems to be that they are incredibly difficult to get into. Why is this the case? Why is there the learning curve perception with fighting games?
Because it's physical, right? Versus learning strategies and other kinds of games. This one is like you have to be actually quick and like adept with your
But I mean,
fingers.
what's the difference? I mean, with a MOBA, you have to be fast.
Yeah,
RTS,
yeah.
you have to be
Overwatch,
fast.
you have to
and there's
be-
strategy.
Yeah.
That's a pretty dumb thing to say.
Hold on, give this man a Snickers.
I agree with this sentiment.
About
that
what?
fighting games are harder to master than
Why is that?
because
So you think it's not a perception? You think that's real? That they
I
are more
think
difficult to
so.
master than than Overwatch?
I think so. Mostly because I'm just not good at fighting.
I'm-
games.
Maybe because
Overwatch has characters you don't even have to aim with.
you know what it is. Honestly, I bet it's because the competitive community is older with fighting games than any other genre that I
Probably.
can think of.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fact
There's a
nice way to
higher
couch your
ceiling,
thought.
is what you're saying.
In theory, here's a thought.
But like, I think there's also like a really good fighting game player like will just annihilate you. Whereas like, I don't know, other genres, if somebody's really good, you might stand a chance, or might at least like let it like you might stretch out the match a little bit more.
Well, that's why I wonder if there's anything to the fact that it's like a one-on-one thing.
Yeah, I think that's
like
part of
it
it.
Yeah.
highlights the fact that the two opponents are highlighted more than like a
You
shooter
can't
where they're like
hide.
you can't hide. Like if you're the
Right.
second worst player on the team, like you're still able to hide in that group.
Right. That's a really smart point too.
Yeah.
I think
Also,
you're
I'm really
smart.
tired.
Hey, you know what?
You nailed it, man.
did
RJ
it.
from Dominican Republic. Here we go. He says, "Here we go. I was rewatching The Hunger Games during the weekend. Also, still confusing. Beyond mobile, there's no Hunger Games Battle Royale, right?
that's
it
strange.
Oh, that is weird. Wait,
It's
there was
insane.
one on mobile?
No, on mobile there was like a platformer thing with great music from Danny Marinowski.
What?
Yeah, the creator of Cannibal made it. It's
What?
cool. Yeah, it's actually really cool. You should
What
look
a
at it.
weird thing.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cannibal Run.
that's right.
There must have been a Fortnite event, right?
No, nothing.
There must
It
be.
is the IP, baby, other than Battle Royale.
Right.
Anyway, so I was watching Battle Royale and was wondering if GI members were selected for the Hunger Games, what skills would you focus on to prepare for survival, and what weapon would you choose? He's listed out all the Hunger Games weapons here, but I'm curious what you guys would choose.
Oh, I don't know the Hunger Games weapons. That might be.
I would
They're
choose
also known as just standard weapons,
Oh,
other than a gun.
So wait, we're
Bow.
just choosing a weapon.
Yeah, what weapon would you choose to bring into Hunger Games
not a
world?
gun.
Not a gun.
Rocket launcher.
Damn it.
I would choose Brian Shea.
The greatest weapon of
as-
them all.
Yeah.
The mind, the human mind.
Yeah, I would focus on my charisma,
That's smart.
persuasion skills.
I mean, just a huge sword.
Yeah,
Is
I
that the way to
guess-
go?
No, not a huge sword because then it's unwieldy.
Right.
You gotta have a
I'm
little
not talking about the
agility
Buster
there.
sword dragging behind you as you walk in there.
Yeah, you got to have like a little speed
Wait,
to your.
I'm a spear guy, so like a really long, pointy spear would be
That's the
great.
spirit.
What can you not actually have?
Oh, what is
Guns?
this? Treehouse localization?
I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him.
Okay, just relax, Lou. Just save it for after the podcast. This is embarrassing.
I'm gonna
Thank you for having
bring.
me on this last time.
I'm gonna bring a giant steel dome that can't be lifted and put it over myself.
It's just you're the only one that's strong enough to lift it.
Bolt it down.
Yeah. Just gasping for air. That'd be fun.
yeah.
I would bring a hive of bees to put in his dome.
Reeves, would you
Oh.
go? That's smart. Would you bring a bow and arrow over a spear or a sword or anything?
I probably would, but it'd probably be my downfall because I'm sure I can't shoot a bow and arrow very well. So somebody had to run up and stab me.
But you could I'll shoot.
Hey, watch out! Watch out!
Don't come any closer.
Somehow
seriously.
it would whip around and hit me.
You put a boomerang in the bow.
Falling right off.
Ow! And I'm hungry.
Yeah, I'm imagining how little of a chance there is of it going straight and fast when you shoot it. It's like, no way.
Yeah.
Good question.
Hunger Games is cool, right?
Nah.
Sure.
I think it's cool. Mike Joyner
Okay, I'm sorry.
from Tucson, Arizona says he gave his exact address. I won't read that, Mike. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. Licensed games. He's like, hey, now I love the DuckTales game and the Simpsons game like everyone else when I was younger, but I'm a grown-ass man now. I demand a certain amount of story and gameplay. I'm not just going to play side-scrolling platformers anymore. Hell yeah, man. We deserve more than platformers. So with these licenses, in what style would you like the game? So a Thundercats game in the style of The Witcher or Animal Crossing?
Animal Crossing.
Hey, it's a question.
Oh,
man.
wait, so this is a either or? Like
Yes.
Okay.
I would go Witcher for sure.
I guess Witcher.
A G.I. Joe game like Battlefield or XCOM?
XCOM. 100%.
Interesting. Home Alone game in
Yes.
the style of
Arkham Knight.
Orcs Must Die or Hitman?
Oh, Hitman.
Hitman for sure. Yeah.
Call it Hit
Yeah.
Boy.
Oh my gosh.
It's all right there.
Honestly,
Hit
who was
alone.
I talking about this with? They should keep making those movies and like with an adult Macaulay Culkin. Like, what does that kid grow up and do?
That's been, yeah, there's like that fan thing. And they made a ad for like Google Home Assistant that was
Yeah,
that.
he's just like yelling out
Where
instructions
they got
to
like Joe Pesci and stuff.
Yeah.
That was so weird.
Sometimes reboots are just commercials. Ferris Bueller's Day Off did that for some car or
By the
something.
way-
Yeah. Yeah, Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
That's how we get this?
Also, Disney is making a new Home Alone, by the way.
Are they
And
really?
apparently the plot, judging from like casting and stuff like that, it's about the not modern day, but the new, what's the kid's called? Not McCullough. Kevin McAllister. He just
Got his
steals
back checked.
something. Yeah, he steals something from a husband and wife, and then the husband and wife are trying to get it back.
That
And that's
sounds
the plot of
terrible.
the
Wait,
new
is he
Home
an
Alone.
adult now, or is it
No,
a
he's
new
still
kid?
he's a precocious 9-year-old.
So,
okay.
are they going to use like that Disney de-aging stuff?
No,
Like they
it's
did with
not going
Robert
to be
Downey
Macaulay
Jr.?
Culkin.
No, it's all CG.
That's right.
It's like
gonna
the
be-
reverse of what they've
Yeah,
been doing.
2D animated.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
that'd
have
be
wanted a Home Alone tower defense game for the longest time.
I mean, yeah, those are both great ideas.
Yeah, for sure. That's fun. Oh, everyone's having fun here. Kyle from Louisville, Kentucky, the first God's country, says, I just wanted to shine a light on a couple developers that have been pushing out consistently excellent games and do not receive enough love. Ready for this,
Rockstar and
Love Fest?
Blizzard.
Oh, sounds great.
Zachtronics, Space Chem, Infinifactory, Opus Magnum, Exapunks. There you go. Shout out to Zachtronics.
Okay. Those weren't other studios.
No, those are the games. Also,
Those
I
are
can't
real
pronounce this
games.
right. Tarsier Studios, Tarsier, who made, any smart people?
Mario Brothers.
Little Nightmares.
Oh, sure.
All right.
And Static, apparently, and the Tearaway Unfolded port for PS4.
And
What a
Little
specific one.
Nightmares 2, presumably?
Presumably. Great choices.
Stairway was great.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that enough.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't played Knights and Bikes from that creative director, that new game.
Yeah.
Joe really liked it, too, and I've been meaning to get around to it.
Does the art style turn me off a bit? Does it turn
Well, it's
you
not
else
supposed
off?
to arouse you.
Okay. Good. I'm glad.
Okay. Yeah. Jacob writes in, he says, hey,
Normal after
crew.
all.
The developer I think doesn't get enough love is Image and Form. Does anybody know what they make?
Sounds familiar.
It's the Emerald
Puzz.
series.
Oh, say puzzle.
Yeah, those games are great.
Hey, it's greater than that name. Image and
really
Form.
is.
But hey, what are you going to do? The great Reverend John Michael Swigert writes in, and developer doesn't get enough love is Gust. They've been cranking out Atelier. I don't know this series.
Atelier.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it? Atelier games, one after the other since 1997. Plus, their music's always fantastic.
97.
Apparently.
There's a series that's been going on for like 20 years. We've never heard of it.
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
I've seen it. I think we've previewed it 1,000 times. I think Kim has reviewed a
Yeah.
bunch of them, right?
I would if I didn't work here, I wouldn't know about it for sure.
Right. Speaking of good music, I wish I knew who composed it, but the music in Ring Fit Adventure, surprisingly good. Shay,
I was
play that.
I'm looking forward to it.
I was doing digital. We have these little 20-second clips of games
In
for
the digital version of Game Informer.
Game Informer.
Don't act like people don't know. Yeah.
For Ring Fit Adventure, I couldn't find any clean music that didn't have people grunting over it or whatever, so I used the 1-2 switch theme.
Really?
All right.
So check out the digital issue for that.
Let's see.
Nobody will know about it, so.
Look at this. The great Reverend. He then transitions. He says, next, Mag was incredible.
Yes, let's get into it.
The thing with Mag is that matches are almost never won by an individual. Squads had to be working together for victory. An individual would die quick while lone wolfing it, but together a group could absolutely make a meaningful difference, and it felt awesome to push objectives as a team or hold an area from waves. No other first-person shooter provides such a sense of progression in a single match. When on offense, blowing up spawn point bunkers to push the defenders back was incredible. Blowing up the anti-air artillery so that your entire team could parachute in built momentum and morale in ways that other games don't even mess with. I still haven't found a game to replace Mag in my life, and I still keep my recorded stats on any new laptop I get. The stats they kept were also incredibly deep. This is me signing out with 11,602 lifetime kills for Reverend. That seems inappropriate.
Gosh, that's great.
By the way, I was playing the Call of Duty mobile game, and Court got a kick out of this too. But like when you just shoot somebody without a headshot or something, it flashes on the screen and just says normal kill.
That's pretty good.
Anyways, so Reverend here, he got 264 wins as a squad leader, 68 wins as platoon leader, and 1 loss as OIC that I can never fix for a grand total of 254 hours, 36 minutes, and 19 seconds.
What's
played.
OIC?
Let's get to it. Ian Bauer writes in from Livermore, California, says, I was the one who voted for Mag and got it put on the list. I also voted for Stranger's Wrath, which is another top 5 for me. All right. I can't understand why Mag is a confusing choice to people, but to me it was something incredibly unique at the time and spoke to me. Using the 128 versus 128 variation, you have a few layers of command. The lowest is squad leader, next is platoon leader, and finally top is company commander. I assume that's what? Maybe I was off, but something like that for OIC. Each leader is assigned at the beginning of the match, and only the leaders are allowed what could be called kill perks in other games. With so many people playing at once, the battlefield is constantly evolving in surprising ways, with some leaders spotting weaknesses and exploiting them in ways that are wholly new. Thanks for the show. You bet, man. John Ron wrote in saying, hey, I just listened to the podcast where Mag was mentioned as the 99th greatest game of all time, according to the Overblood fan group. I was a huge fan of this game and was very upset when I was 1 trophy away from platinum and the game went offline.
Oh, no.
Oh, isn't that devastating?
Does he say which one?
No.
Oh.
But I bet the Reverend got it. Darius wrote in saying, hi, Ben, Fred, Jordan, Peter, and Ivan.
Nailed it.
I have a very mildly interesting story about Mag. In the summer of 2008, when it was announced at Sony's E3 conference, I immediately was enamored with the idea. And I made a Facebook page titled Mag: Massive Action Game. And I gave it the official logo and posted all the screenshots from the conference. I immediately forgot about the game and this page, like most people, until I was prompted about it in 2010 and realized it had over 1,000 followers.
Wow.
Naturally, I did what any mature and sensible child would do and immediately started posting ridiculous statuses. I hope they were appropriate, Darius, but that does sound fun. Okay, here's a
That's
game.
fun.
Here's a game.
Real
Yay.
quick, thanks everybody for writing in about Mag. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that first person talking about how it was the whole team working together to take points or whatever, I wonder if they'd like Mordhau, because that's similarly, you can't have one
interesting.
person carrying a match. It's got to be like team, like, okay, we're pushing now, everybody move on this point.
And Mordhau's still just PC exclusive, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Steam.
There we go.
What about Siege? That seems like a game that requires teamwork.
Yeah, you can get carried, though, if there's a really
Okay.
good player.
Push me, pull
My
you.
apologies.
No.
Luke M.
Forgiven.
says, hey, I'm Luke from Mendota, Illinois. I thought it'd be a fun idea to give you a game of game quote trivia.
Oh, boy.
So I will give you a list of 10 somewhat obscure quotes from games from about the last 20 years or so, and the first person to guess the game wins. Your fruit killing skills are remarkable.
Fruit Ninja.
Call of Duty, Modern Warfare.
Brian Shea, way to
Really?
go, buddy. We just did the game club.
We
yeah,
did.
hell yeah.
In what context is that?
If you shoot a fruit, I guess in the tutorial
No,
or
in
something?
the tutorial, like, you give, like, the melee tutorial is to knife a watermelon.
I don't think I would have gotten that, and I
I think
just
that's
played
Captain
that.
Price.
Okay, here we go. I feel like I can't do a voice with it. Entaro Aiden, Executor.
Pokemon, obviously, because Executor.
Reeves?
Hamtaro?
Can you say it again?
Entaro Adun, Executor.
Oh, sure. It's StarCraft.
There we go.
Never mind.
Okay, this is an odd one. Was it red, red, green or red, green, red?
Simon.
This was actually the Red Green Show video game released
Oh.
on Nintendo DS. No.
Oh, man.
And that's a trivia question.
Hey, if women don't find you handy.
At least, well,
Right.
other way around.
Yeah,
Women
you know.
don't find you handsome, they at least find you handy. It's very fun.
Tell me.
It is
Puyo.
Republic Commando.
Okay, so I didn't know it.
Come on.
What was about to say?
Okay. You and I are going to tear S up.
Did he actually say S, or does he say
No, he
the
says
naughty
the word.
word?
He says
Grand
the
Theft
naughty
Auto?
word.
Bulletstorm.
It's from the villain of a game. I believe at the beginning of the game when he speaks to you, he says this.
Far Cry 4.
Far Cry?
Way to go.
yeah.
Wow. Way to
Yep.
go, man.
nice.
Hey, listen.
Oh, Navi. From
Correct.
Legend of
Okay.
I
Zelda.
thought you were segueing into the next. Okay.
It's a me, Mario.
Oh my gosh, I think that's
StarCraft.
Mario 64.
Assassin's Creed 2.
Damn it.
Oh,
Luke was
that's
a little
right.
stinker with the
That's
Mario
right.
characters.
I remember that.
Ain't he a stinker? That's so fun.
Do we let stinkers right in now? Is that where the
Yeah,
show is
all
gone?
stinkers right into podcastagainformer.com. Leo, stinkers welcome.
Wow. We used
Floodgates
to be
are
something.
open.
Oh, Blake Kibbe gets in twice. 2 stinkers for the price of
Oh,
one.
what a stinker.
He says, I made you a game. Can you identify one of the best-selling video games, according to Wikipedia, with the release year, number of units sold over its lifetime, and a jumbled title?
Oh, no.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's some notes. Sequels with numbers in the title have the numbers spelled out. So instead of just number 3, he spelled it out THREE, so it adds to the anagram.
Oh, no.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. Abbreviations have been spelled out, Mario Brothers instead of Mario Bros, stuff like that. All right. Number 1 selling game. Oh, of all time? I guess. Oh, Jesus. Oh.
Huh.
Oh.
Huh?
Okay. Yeah, all right. From 1984.
Tetris.
Wow. There it is. No more information needed. This
What
is
was?
amazing.
Can you say
What
what
was the jumble,
was?
though?
Triset. Okay. From 1985, number 1 selling game. 48 million copies sold. 1985, you guys, come on.
Super Mario Brothers?
Mario
There we
Brothers?
go.
I didn't know we were supposed to. I thought we were waiting for that.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that.
Oh, okay.
The jumble seems like the fun part.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
So what was
What's
the jumble?
What's the jumble on that one?
That's bro, our rap, these rims. Okay, here we go. From 1988, their spare reset rum orb.
Mega
Why?
Man?
Sold 19 million copies.
1988.
Their spare reset rum orb. You're in the
Duck Hunt.
Nope. You're in the ballpark.
Super Mario Bros. 2,
3.
3.
Okay.
So
Oh,
I
interesting.
thought
Spelled out
27.
letters or
Oh,
spelled
this
out
is
numbers.
really tricky. Okay, 1989. This sold 18 million. Palm-Aid runs ore.
Can you spell or?
O-R-E?
Thank you.
Palm-Aid runs ore.
I thought it could have been O apostrophe ER, but then I realized those are the same letters, so it doesn't quite matter so much
true.
as I thought.
Keep in mind, an earlier one was bro, our rap.
Super Mario Brothers?
Super Mario Land. Okay,
Oh,
let's get
wow,
off the Mario
cool game.
Okay, here we go. 1991. OG, The Chin Gods. 1991, a game that sold 24 million copies.
No, who are the
Sonic the
chin
Hedgehog.
guys?
Sonic the Hedgehog. Way to
Oh,
go,
wow.
Shay.
I'm just
Way
going
to
off
go.
the release year at this point.
2000, a game that sold 16 million copies.
Halo Combat Evolved.
That's 2001. You.
Damn it.
You.
What is it? Leo, this is
goon.
called the Game Informer show.
We can't have game losers on.
Yeah, he's making people dumber.
He's uninforming people. He's stealing it.
Reeves, can you hear us? What are you doing here?
Yeah, wait. Hey, I thought you guys were having a secret conversation.
Yeah. Welcome.
Do you guys need any water or anything?
Yeah, can you get us some water? Okay, from 2000, She Stim.
The Sims.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
2001, Tree Target Hand Hotfu.
Oh, I have no idea.
The Legend of. No.
Shenmue.
2001.
Grand Theft Auto?
There we go. 3. Yes. Oh my God. 2005. 24 million copies sold. Sind Tong.
Sind
Tong.
Tong.
Sind?
Tong. 2005. A game that sold 24 million copies. Isn't this deceptive? Juggernaut. Secret, quiet. Well, not quiet. They make a lot of noise.
What?
2005. What system was hot? 2005.
PS2.
No.
Xbox 360.
No. Like seriously hot and newish.
The Wii.
No, that was not out yet. Reeves. The Wii wasn't released until the next year.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
What are you doing? It's embarrassing.
The Nintendo DS.
Okay.
Okay.
Star Fox.
2005. Sind Tong.
This is really hard for me to picture the words. Like, I feel like I need to look at
Well,
them.
think of the word Sind, because it's like
SIND?
SINN.
Oh,
Why was I also thinking SIND? That's
I
not
don't know.
anything.
That's
Yeah.
my name in RPGs.
Oh.
Maybe that's why you're thinking of it.
That's
No,
what it is.
That's not it.
Franche?
Sind Tong.
Do you know what? Oh, you don't know it?
No.
Think of
Dennis Tong.
what sins
Please,
the
Dennis
most
Tong is
in
my
life?
father.
What sins a lot?
Gods?
Brian Shea.
Brian Shea. No, what about what animals are naughty?
Ooh,
Snakes.
Puppies.
Was that Reeves?
Puppies?
Nintendo.
Nintendo!
Wow.
That doesn't seem long enough.
That doesn't seem right.
No.
I guess it is just right though, huh?
2007 game that sold 44 million copies.
Guitar Hero 3.
If I Wit.
We Fit.
There we go. Oh my God. 2009. This game sold 30 million copies. Where I spun brats, I wire more.
Good Lord.
Is it Bioshock Infinite?
No, it might have some similarities to something else that we've talked about.
2009.
New Super Mario
I
Brothers
Spun
Wii. New Super Mario Brothers Wii.
Oh.
2011. Oh my God. 2011. This game has sold 176 million copies. Fit Car Men.
Was that not a game? You accidentally said the real thing, I think.
Fit Car
2011.
Massive franchise.
Oh my God, you guys. 176 million. That's more than Tetris. What game has sold more than Tetris?
Tetris 2.
That came out in 2011.
Grand Theft Auto?
No.
It was kind of on a cover of Game Informer.
2011. I'm thinking that was Skyrim.
Fit Car Men. I'd argue it released the same day as Skyrim.
You would argue?
I'd argue.
What?
It did come out the exact same day. Here's a hint. Version 1.0 came out the same day as Skyrim.
Oh, Fortnite.
Fit Car Men.
Nice. Paint a picture.
Alex, you know in the booth? Okay, Alex is losing his mind, thank God.
Call of Duty.
Plants vs. Zombies.
Fit Car 176 million copies. Do you remember Game Informer's 300th issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember
Oh, number 300.
Meg?
Tetris.
Are you guys kidding me?
I wish we did this at the very first start of this segment.
Because we would have sped through the rest of it to save time.
My brain would have still been on.
Reeves, this is absurd.
Red Dead Redemption.
We're gonna get fired, dude. Say,
Are we going to get fired?
yeah, just effing say the name of the game. That came out in 2011 that has sold 176 million and was one of the
Saints Row the Third.
what 5 covers that Game Informer did for the 300th issue, and the back looked terrible.
Minecraft.
Jesus Christ! Thank you, Minecraft.
Oh my gosh.
I am sorry on behalf of every listener and viewer that had
I
to
knew that.
drive their car off a
I
cliff.
knew that one.
the Fit
Oh
Car.
my God. Oh, also 2011, this game came out, 30 million copies. Reverse Fetch, Risky Slim Idol.
Yeah, this one will be a cakewalk after that.
Skyrim.
There we go, way to go. Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim. Oh, this is interesting.
Is it?
I think so. 2011, 27 million copies. This is a shocker.
What year?
2011, Rare Art.
Mario Kart?
These are anagrams, not rhymes for the last time.
I'm still confused.
So it's the
rare
opposite
art.
word is what you're saying?
Rare Art.
Does the comma
No, the comma doesn't matter.
Oh, well, that's deceptive.
Rare art.
Yeah.
Rare art?
It's a lot. It is clearly inspired by another game that also happened to be released in 2011 that might have sold 176 million units.
I'll be honest, my brain isn't even
Really?
trying to figure it out.
Is
It's
it-
just waiting for this to be over. That's all my brain is doing right now.
Roblox.
What's a 2D version of that?
Oh, Terraria.
There we
Okay.
go. All right, let me find a fun one so Leo, I guess, will have a good time.
This is a great segment.
Yeah.
And you should keep it in, but
Yeah,
also
yeah.
I couldn't imagine it going any worse.
Okay, great. 2017, a game that sold
God.
50 million copies.
Okay.
Blunt Tons and Pal Woken Surgery.
Oh. Blunt Man and Chronic?
Yep.
What is it again? Blunt what?
Blunt Tons and Pal Woken Surgery.
And what was the year?
This segment,
2017.
it will never end.
Well, but come on. Is it Legend of Zelda? Breath of the Wild?
It is not. Are you just kidding? You're not thinking about the anagram at all, are you?
I'm not either.
Blunt Tongs and
50 million copies is a lot.
1-2 Switch.
Incorrect.
Blunt Tons.
It sold more copies than the original Mario Brothers.
So 1-2 Switch.
No. Blunt
Blunt
Tons
Tons
and
and
Pal Woken
Carmen.
Surgery.
God of War. That was 2018.
2017! The biggest sensation in gaming in 2017.
Fortnite.
Well, I already said Breath
Middle
of the
Earth,
Wild.
Shadow of Mordor.
What came before that?
PUBG.
PlayerUnknown's Battleground.
I knew that one.
That game
That's it?
was great. I don't care what you guys say. I love that Blake
It's a great
Kitty.
idea for a game.
Next time I have a game night.
I'm sure
I'm
there's
gonna-
a panel smart enough to do it somewhere on some podcast.
And they're marching down to the office right now to kick your ass.
Also, I've been on this podcast for what feels like 17 hours. and
Welcome
my
to the
brain,
show.
My brain is falling
What do you
apart.
guys like for email of the week?
I like
last
the
one.
That
anagram
last
game.
one, yeah, that was great.
Are you guys serious? I do like that.
I like.
I like the amount of time you put into those anagrams.
I like it, but it might set a precedent for people sending in games, and even if they don't work, they'll get picked.
Okay, interesting.
I think it should.
Sure. I mean,
There was one that I liked, but I can't remember because it was
I
so long ago.
like the remake of the remakes or remasters of the remake.
that's a
Like
good
that's
one.
just a fun little thought. That's
No.
a good idea. Really, Shay?
There was another one.
I also
why
like
is it being
what are you
contrary?
jealous of for your coworkers? I think
Yeah,
that's
totally.
fun.
That's
Honestly,
good.
that one's
That
probably
one?
my favorite.
I think
yeah.
I like the remasters better.
I think I do too. Shay, I need you to make the call. Oh, I'm sorry. Shay's gonna page through every.
He's gonna make the call.
What's he doing?
I'm looking at the.
He's just giving himself a
Hold
shot.
on.
What
I
the
like
hell was up with those
Leo
anagrams?
having to call his mom.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that was a good one.
Yeah, that's good.
was fun.
That's Andrew Flanagan.
That's a good dare.
All right, Reeves, make the call. It's all to you, buddy. Your big day.
I like the precedent of more dares.
Yeah, let's go with the dare.
There we go. That's the big daddy dare. That's from Andrew Flanagan in California. Let me find the exact town. That's Riverside.
Oh! Well
Can't get
done.
better than Riverside,
Well done,
California,
dude.
can ya?
Can
Oh
you
my
put up a
gosh.
pin for my mom as well?
Yeah, I think we should just give it to Leo's mom.
Yeah, we can-
where is she located?
Easy.
All right, Jay. Jeez.
If I'm gonna have to take her on a date.
What was that?
Hold on.
I mean, this is the woman who gave me life. Yeah. Respect her. I know I do.
Hey guys, here's your water.
What's that?
Oh, sorry, it took so long. Here's your water.
Oh, great. Why'd you give it to us in these gerbil water dispensers?
We're not gonna be able to use this segment, are we?
All right, podcast@gameformer.com for all emails in the future. And for now, stay tuned and let's learn about Apple Arcade from people who actually develop games for the Apple Arcade. Even if you aren't into Apple or games in general, it's an interesting perspective, just indie developers finding this life raft in the mobile market. And we talk about how that came to be. So stay tuned for that chat. Dan, Andrew, Sam, welcome to the Game Informer Show, guys.
Happy to be here.
Oh my gosh,
Thank
it's an
you.
honor to have everybody. It's always confusing with the Dev Roundtable, especially for audio listeners. Andrew, senior producer for Skate City from Snowman, the studio behind Alto's Adventure. Hello, sir.
Hey, good to see you.
That is Andrew's voice. Everybody remember that one. Okay, Dan from Cappy with Grindstone. Hello, sir.
How's it going?
Real good, real good. And Sam, the founder of Game Band, the creator of Where Cards Fall. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you all develop games for the Apple Arcade. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Do you feel like there's a certain amount of camaraderie between developers? Have you guys communicated much amongst each other and other developers, or you just want to talk about kind of this culture and scene?
Guys, this is the first time I'm meeting them, so I would say no.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. I don't think we've spoken yet, Dan, but I think there's definitely a sense of camaraderie within game developers, and especially within Arcade. Especially even with Toronto, like we meet up with Nathan all the time from Cappy, and like we go to dinner and hang out and stuff. So that's really cool. It's always good to have people within your industry that you can sort of talk to that can relate to the experiences that you're going through, and you can kind of get tips from, especially in the case of being like less or more experienced because the types of people in this industry come from such a wide variety of backgrounds. So that's really cool, just to kind of draw on each other's experiences and talk things through and get inspiration really from each other.
Yeah. So
like Andrew said, Toronto is actually like a really tight scene. There's a lot of developers here, and everyone seems to know everyone. But for launching on Arcade, we were sort of heads down working on stuff, and I didn't even know what other games were coming. That was a huge question mark. Like, okay, I know we're on there. What else? And then like the day it launches, we're like, oh, cool, they're on there, and oh, look at that. And then actually yesterday I was walking down the street and like saw a guy I hadn't seen in 6 years, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, we just put something on Arcade. He's like, I got something coming on Arcade. I was like, whoa.
Is Toronto a big mobile town in general?
I think it's just a big everything game dev scene, especially indie, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know there's like the big Ubisoft studio and stuff. What other big studios going on up there?
Oh yeah, there's also Ubisoft. How did I forget them?
That little studio and stuff.
For the first time a couple months ago. It was really cool.
What's that?
Oh, we went to the Ubisoft studio for the first time just a couple months ago. So it's really cool to just kind of be introduced to all the other game studios. There's always someone you're meeting for the first time. There's a lot of game meetups in Toronto and a lot of game development schools, which is really great. Like the industry really provides a lot of cool avenues for people that are coming into the industry to grab footholds and get that first position. You always have a lot of different options to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. Sam, and you're just out on an island out there in LA?
You know, it's funny, like even though I'm separate, I'm not in Toronto, me and Andrew have been hanging out for years now, because Where Cards Fall is a collaboration between my studio, the Game Band, and Snowman. So those guys out in Toronto. Andrew's been working on Skate City, but you know, throughout the whole process, like we've become really, really close friends.
Nice. And Sam, what have you worked on in the past?
So before Where Cards Fall, I was at a studio called Giant Sparrow, and they made What Remains of Edith Finch. And then before that, I was at Toys for Bob, working on Skylanders. That's
an amazing pedigree. What Remains of Edith Finch? Was that game as challenging on a technical level as it seemed?
Yeah, it was a really, really tricky game to design, because it kind of felt like, you know, you were working on a whole bunch of games at once. You know, typically when you're developing like a series of mechanics and interactions, you've got your like kind of core set that you're polishing over the course of development. But for Finch, it was like 8 or 9 little games that you know, all needed to kind of be built from the ground up. So it's really, really tricky. And then if one of them wasn't working, like it kind of brings down the whole. So it was a long, long process, but really rewarding.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. All right, Dan in particular with Cappy, I'm curious about your history with Apple and how you got approached about Apple Arcade and how much you knew, because it certainly feels like Grindstone could have been a game that was developed for a completely different ecosystem here.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been hearing a lot of that, or like seeing that on Twitter. Yeah, we actually have a long history with Apple. We released Critter Crunch for Apple, like one of the first iterations of iPhone. I don't even remember what year that was. It's so long ago. And then we made kind of a big splash with Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery EP, which was like 2011. And that was a really cool time in mobile, because it felt like all these other really creative games were flooding into the App Store, and it just felt like a really kind of golden time to try new, strange, kind of arty ideas. And we always meant to keep that going. It's just the way life goes. You get other projects, other opportunities, and so we kind of just went into the console space for a while. And then Grindstone was this pet project that was always bubbling in the background of the studio. And it was always intended to go to iPhone, to go to mobile. And then finally we're like, how long has it been since we made a mobile game? Holy, that's a long time. And it's like, let's finish this thing. And then as we were making it, this whole Apple Arcade thing came to our knowledge, and we're like, I think we want to be on that. That sounds cool. And luckily we had a Nathan who knows people and got in the right rooms, and we made it on.
How much has that changed the design discussions about just, okay, we don't have to try and push people towards microtransactions? Does it have like a lot of tendrils diving deep into design there?
Yeah, it didn't change much. That's the funny thing. There's a lot of talk on Twitter and forums like, oh, I bet this was totally built for microtransactions and ads and stuff. And to be totally honest, we knew that was, before we knew about Arcade, the reality of making a game for that space is like, okay, we should probably, to get it in the most amount of hands and to get the most exposure, we should probably go ad supported or free to play. And something we had no experience with, so we were kind of uncomfortable with it. We kind of pushed that off and just kept working on the core of the game. And then we had ideas, and we had just started to sort of storyboard, okay, here's our approach to ads. We definitely didn't want the ads to be intrusive. We didn't want ads just like, oh, I finished a level, suddenly an ad comes up. We were not into that at all. We wanted it to be entirely an opt-in ad system that was in the voice of the game. So like a guy that gives you ads and it's skinned as like a character moment. It's actually the Mystic who's in the game now who gives you the bonus levels. He was our ad guy. It was like you would path into him and he would create this portal and go like, I'm going to show you this mysterious other dimension. And you'd stick your head in and then an ad would play. And we were just starting to build that when the arcade thing happened. And we were like, okay, we don't have to do any of that stuff. Wicked. And so it was just like, we just cut all the plans to do any of that, but it didn't change the design of the game really at all. Everything that you see in the game, in the arcade version, we had built because that's what we wanted the game to play like. It was really just the ad stuff that we're like, we don't have to do that, you know?
It's crazy to think about like the evolution of the Apple marketplace. You talk about the Sword and Sorcery era where it was more premium, a little bit more creative, artsy. You could say, hey, this is going to cost $5, and people are like, yeah, I'm okay with that. It seems like Snowman in particular, with Alto, you guys have really kept that rolling in a way few other studios have. How have you done that?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question we ask ourselves every time we start thinking about a game. And we're always like, mobile is always front and center and place of mind for us when we're thinking about a new project. It's just what we've been successful at and how we sort of got our start. So it's what we know and what we practice, so we're comfortable there. And I think with Alto, there's always like a little bit of luck. Like, we don't want to say that everything that we did was just pitch perfect and perfect timing. But I think there is an appetite for those types of games where players want end-to-end experience, where they can fully immerse themselves in the world and they don't have to worry about being taken out of that with ads and paywalls and sort of looming monetization loops that are sort of hanging over that experience. And I think those are the kind of games that we gravitate to as players as well. Like we try to make games that we would enjoy playing as well. Alto is definitely one of those. So is Skate City. So is Where Cards Fall. Anytime we consider a new idea, we first and foremost just want to play it ourselves. And those just happen to be the experiences that we enjoy. So we've never really considered stepping into the free-to-play market. So I think when Apple Arcade came around, it was like an amazing arena to be able to step into, not only because it allows developers to sort of push the boundaries of what mobile gaming can be, but also for players that want that experience where they get games in other places that are those end-to-end, fully encompassed games. And I think, that's sort of just what we've always shot for. And I think that's what made Alto special. And a lot of players reach out to us, a lot of really cool connection there. And that's what we want to bring to our games.
It's wild to think. I mean, I would, reason to guess that every developer says, oh, we make games that we want to play. A majority of developers at least. But still, like, is it the level of support from Apple that led to Alto's success, or is it word of mouth, or what? How do you think you guys were able to thrive in that environment when it seems like so many other developers just sank?
I think on one hand, it's like being there at the right time. Like Dan was saying, there was sort of that golden age of game development on the App Store when everything was new, and there weren't these established sort of grooves in the hill that like free-to-play really sort of entrenched. Whereas I think a lot of the conversation between gamers and sort of in the zeitgeist now is that when you think of a mobile game, you think of free-to-play because the market's sort of spoken and that's what's the most successful. So that's what you might come to expect. So as a player, I'm excited that there's this new sort of reinvigorated conversation around premium games in Apple Arcade.
Yeah.
With Alto specifically, I think it was a matter of timing and I have to tip my hat to Harry Nesbitt, the artist. Like, he really captured a sense of place and a sense of feeling that snowboarding in general gives you. And that's always what we want to bring to each experience, sort of like the essence of what we're trying to give a player and trying to recreate on your phone.
Yeah. So, Sam, at a certain point, Andrew just told you, like, hey, there's this Apple Arcade thing, and it seems perfect for this game you're developing. Or what was your journey towards Apple Arcade like?
It's funny. We were already designing Where Cards Fall for Apple's platforms. The reason for that is, as a studio, we're really interested in finding ways to just broaden the audience for games. So Where Cards Fall is a game that's like a very deep, rich puzzle game. So we expected that people that already love puzzle games and narrative games would really enjoy it. But because the interactions were designed to be so simple and could be like understandable, for anybody that's used an iPhone before, we're like, okay, well, maybe there's a real opportunity here to bring some people into the fold that aren't already playing games. So that's what we were focusing on touch devices. So when we found out about Apple Arcade, we're just like, okay, this is the perfect fit for this game, because this game is like way more. It's bigger, it's more substantial than the types of stuff we typically see on mobile. It's the type of thing that we'd probably want to charge like $20 or more for on a more traditional game platform. But there's just no way, there was never really any way of doing that on mobile and really, giving the game the value that it deserved. So when Apple Arcade came around, we're like, okay, like here's a place where the game can be, dignified and like respected the way that we want it to, and it can reach the audience that we want. And it also allows people that maybe aren't already interested in it to give it a shot. Like you might subscribe to Apple Arcade for Grindstone, which I hope you do. It's an awesome game. And then see our game right next to it and go, hey, like that looks kind of interesting, and check it out too.
Yeah. Okay. So the history with Apple and communication with Apple, what do you think has changed with Apple Arcade? Is it new leadership? Have they changed their communication with the devs that have worked with them in the past? How would you describe Apple and their level of communication in this phase?
So I guess for us, like Snowman had a really wonderful relationship with Apple, and we, we're always like just kind of eager to talk to them. But the, I don't know, it doesn't feel super different for me, because like they always kind of had an interest in our game, and we just were able to kind of continue talking with them, and it just kind of became like more of a natural progression and a natural fit. So like they've always just been a pleasure to work with. Yeah.
Dan, how have you noticed the evolution of Apple?
Yeah, I gotta say, I can't see much of a change, because Grindstone, like I said, it was always this thing that was in the background of the studio that Apple has known about for a long time, and they were like, we want that, let's do it. And so they have played like every early build all the way through. And so there was a sort of seamlessness between what Grindstone was going to be in the App Store and what it became on the arcade platform. Like there was no kind of like, because it's on arcade, you need to do this or that. It was like they accepted the game for what it was, exactly as it was. And so to me, it was a very seamless transition. I mean, I'm sure for them it was like incredibly hard to launch all like 100 games all at once and a new platform, and like I'm sure they were running around crazy. But for us, it was like we asked them a question, we got an answer. It was we dealt with some of the same people we had always dealt with. So to me, it was very seamless.
That's the key. So it's still the same people. It's not like new people kicked down the door and said, "This is the new way we're doing it, and we're gonna go reach out to Cappy now."
Yeah, not that I knew of. No.
Okay. All right, that helps. I'd imagine one of your first questions is, how do we get paid for this thing? Yes.
And then we all go quiet.
So you can't reveal too much, right? I'm just curious. I mean, good deal, happy with the deal. It seems like it's going to be a good future for developers out there.
Yeah, I think Arcade really let us make Skate City at least exactly as we intended it to be. They didn't really place any design constraints or ask us to do things differently, which is really cool. They're just really supportive, and it let us make the game that we wanted to make, and we feel great about how we made it and moving forward with the game as well. Is there a certain ideal scale for games because they're giving you some sort of bulk, financing, and then it's like, okay, we can make this level of thing, or is it flexible based on the scale of the game? They're super supportive, but that's all I can kind of say about that. Okay, this was one of their decrees. If you're an Apple Arcade, you can't talk about money.
I mean, I think if you look at the games on Arcade, there's a whole bunch of different scales of game. There's like short, sweet narrative experiences. There's long RPG experiences. I don't think there's this kind of like one size fits all. This is what an arcade game has to be, and we're only gonna fund these kinds of games. I think there's like a huge, diverse collection already, and I think it's just gonna get more and more so.
Yeah. And it's not a matter of you guys getting paid based on minutes played or anything like that. Okay, everyone's looking around. Very
I was like looking for a
interesting.
lawyer behind.
Oh God, that's totally fine. It is crazy to spend a lot of time digging through Apple Arcade and then going back to standard mobile games. Like, all right, Mario Kart Tour, I'll give that a whirl. Or like Call of Duty Mobile came out this week, I'll try that. And it's just like, oh, that's right. It makes me feel gross to leave my little folder where I have all Apple Arcade stuff. How do you guys see that differentiation? Do you think that Apple Arcade is just going to get bigger and bigger, and eventually bigger franchises will move in there?
Really tough to say right now.
It is.
Yeah, it's a really exciting launch lineup. Like Dan was saying, it's really diverse. We're seeing all different types of experiences in there. And I think if you were just to try to stay in your comfort zone in Apple Arcade, you'd have a really difficult time because there's so many, every game is so different from the one right next to it. And I hope that part of it at the very least continues. I think that's really exciting. But yeah, I don't know, right now the lineup feels very, very different from what we're getting on other platforms. You're not seeing the big AAA shooters. You're not seeing big MOBAs and everything. It's a different style of games. It's a different breed. And that's very exciting. I think anything that can come in and kind of make its stamp with kind of its own collection, all it can help do is broaden what we've got for the industry and just get more players into the fold and give people experience that they didn't know they'd already love.
Totally. In terms of just hey, here's a dump of a ton of new IP. I mean, it's unprecedented in a lot of ways for the industry. Crazy. It's just wild.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you think about us on the press side? I think it's been challenging, at least from our perspective, to dig through everything. Are you frustrated by the lack of press or the lack of reviews out there for a lot of this content?
It's a mixed bag. I can appreciate how hard it must be for you guys to go okay, this crazy new thing has just launched, and inside that crazy new thing that deserves coverage on its own, there's 100 other little things, and where do we even start? And I've been really happy with the press we've got so far. We could always use more. We love the game, and we would love it to be in as many hands as possible. And it's the other thing is that it's different than just a regular launch. It's we want to reach the people that already have the service, because that's the only people that can play the game. So it's about reaching people that are already receptive to the service in general. To be honest, I had no idea what this was going to be like. I had my head down working on Grindstone. And the entire platform to me was a big question mark. What's going to be on there? How are people going to receive it? Both the press and the consumers. And I opened it on day one and I was like, whoa, I'm a kid in a candy store. I was super excited. And I thought maybe that was just me. And then I started to look at press, and I was expecting, to be honest, I was expecting a similarly skeptical opinion from the press. We'll hold off and see. But I was really pleased to see so many outlets going holy shit, this is amazing. This is really cool. I've heard people say it's one of the strongest game launches or service or console launches of a collection of things. And I think they're right. I think it's it came out of kind of nowhere. People knew about it, but I don't think the expectations were as high as they are now for what's going to come forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, Andrew, from my perspective, it's weird just hearing whispers and murmurings of I dug through, I downloaded stuff. It's all right, this thumbnail looks cool. This thumbnail looks cool. It's I don't know what else to go off of here, right? Because there's not just a batch of reviews out there. But it's it's crazy because it's oh yeah, the team behind Alto, they made a game in here, and it's where is it? I wish the developers were more upfront in the App Store just to see oh, it's this pedigree, instead of the genre and then this detail, then this detail. It's get the devs out there more. Are you frustrated with that a little bit, or do you think people are finding it?
Yeah, I don't think so. First off, I have to give my hat off to our devs at Agents in Norway. They're the dev studio that we made the game with, and we published with them. So they put in, years and years of work into this game, and it was really showing. And the response we're getting to the game from players and press is amazing. It's almost overwhelming in its positivity. But I think overwhelming is kind of the word we're using more and more when we think about arcade. In the last week, in any bit of spare time I've tried to download a few titles, but I'll play a game for 10 or 15 minutes and be oh, this is awesome. Oh, this is really cool. This is really well considered. But then I feel that tug, that sort of Netflix scroll that you want to dive through and just hop into the next game. So I think right now, at least for a little while, there'll be sort of a new, I don't want to say disposability, but I think the pull to jump around between games is so strong that a lot of players and probably definitely the press haven't been able to dive into each game and really see the depth that's available. So I think that will come. It's very different from any other launch where you get, a couple games a week or like one game every once in a while, but having everything up front is just going to mean that players have more to discover as time goes on. And we can't wait to see what everyone says as they get deeper and deeper into the games, like Where Cards Fall and Grindstone, all these other great titles in the service.
Yeah. Sam, what's been the biggest surprise for you so far throughout the entire process?
Oh man, well, Where Cards Fall has been sort of in development for like the better part of my life, so it's kind of hard to pick just one. I think the biggest surprise is just like the fact that we're here, like that this game was made and we're here getting this game out on Apple Arcade. Like when we first decided to work with Snowman 4 years ago, like the plan was, okay, we're going to make this like little more polished version of the game was originally a student project. So we're going to take the student project and just polish it up a little bit, get it out there in a year. And we're going to do it with like 3 people. And that did not happen. Like we had like greater visions for the game, and Snowman was supportive of that, and we took our time, and Apple was excited about it early, and then eventually Arcade became a thing, and we decided to jump into that. And throughout the process, like we had the opportunity to build this amazing team of people. There are 20 people right now at the Game Band, and they're all it's just such an incredible group. It's the most talented team I've ever had the privilege of working with, and I never expected to be able to do that with our first project, and I never expected the game to turn out the way that it did.
What kind of feedback are you looking for? You guys just on Twitter with quotes around Where Cards Fall, just over and over again, searching YouTube, stuff like that?
Yeah, basically. I'm excited though to see like these guys are talking about months down the line what people say. Like I think Where Cards Fall is especially the type of game that it really has to like kind of sit with you for a little bit. I don't think we're going to get a lot of like quick reactions to it. But maybe like a couple months from now, maybe a year from now or so, somebody will write us in and say like, hey, this game meant a lot to me. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. Dan, what have you found that's been the most interesting feedback?
People don't like my level 21. They really don't like it. It's too hard. No, one of the most gratifying things, the team is just like overwhelmed with the response to the game. I think because it's something that has been with us for so long, we've sort of taken it for granted. Just like, oh yeah, it's this thing that's a known quantity to us, and we've just been really gratified by how excited people got by what on the surface looks like a very simple puzzle game, a beautifully rendered puzzle game with tons of character and blood, but a puzzle game. And so that's been really gratifying. One of the things that's really made me excited is the soundtrack, the response to the soundtrack, because I got my little cousin to make it. I mean, he's not little, he's like 27, but I'm old, so that's little. And yeah, we took a chance on him. I knew he made great stuff, and we were looking for composers, and I was like, I think my little cousin can do this. And everyone was like, oh, this is going to get awkward when we have to fire Dan's. He came in and just killed it, and then there's just like people on Twitter just going, what is going on with this music? I need it. And like, that's been super great for him because he's just starting his career, and I think that's been awesome. But in general, the response has just been fabulous. Like we're sort of, yes, I'm like refreshing Twitter and going, seeing what people are saying, and constantly it's kind of an addiction. I need to stop.
Talking about the music is interesting. What do you guys think about the ability to play podcasts or play your own music in your games? Was that part of the Apple Arcade kind of decree, is like, hey, don't make that an option?
No, I think for us it's a bug and we fixed it.
Oh, really?
There's an update coming.
Sam, for you? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're a little more obnoxious about it. We don't let you do it because we really wanted you to be kind of in the world of our game and to really focusing on the game. Where Cards Fall also has a really great soundtrack, and the soundtrack's by a friend of mine named Torin Borodale. I wanted you all to hear his amazing work. And our audio director, Christy, she put so much work and love into the sound effects in the game. So I just thought it'd be a real shame to not be able to hear that.
I get it. Let's see. Andrew, predictions for the future. Where do you think Apple Arcade is going to be at 2 years from now? Do you see it as a sustainable avenue for a lot of smaller indie devs out there?
We're at the wild speculation phase of the podcast.
Complete speculation.
Yeah, we're nothing but like excited here. We are like eternally optimistic about most things. I think that's why we like take risks on making premium titles. And I think Arcade has the potential to really break through to a new audience that maybe doesn't consider themselves gamers or hasn't really played a lot of console games. The fact that anyone can get high quality games that are more bite-sized is really awesome. And I think just that the potential there to make new types of games, break a lot of the molds that what we
hang on, I think a DeLorean is taking off. What in God's name is that? Dan, are you being thrown in a dump truck?
That's not me. That's not me. I had the siren earlier. There was a siren. That was me.
All right, that'll be the great mystery. I'm sorry, what words of wisdom were you saying, Andrew, before a rocket took off?
That was just the speculation train rolling in. And just yeah, it's an awesome new avenue to sort of push what we expect from mobile games, from games on your TV, games on your Mac. And I think it will hopefully encourage more developers to take a lot more risks and try to create new, bold things.
And you think the terms from Apple are sustainable moving forward for devs?
Yeah, I think it puts developers in a really good position.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Sam, anything else you want to say about your experience, man?
I don't know. I'm just really grateful for the whole thing. I guess since you're asking a little bit about like sustainability and everything, I'll just say that our game wouldn't exist without Apple Arcade. Like, there's just no way. So if you play our game and you enjoy where it's all, like, that's, I think, a pretty good answer to how happy the developers are.
That's interesting. Dan, you're committed to Apple Arcade. You think Cappy's going to keep making games for it?
I certainly hope so. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited by the platform. And I just wanted to congratulate these guys on their launch as well, because they made 2 beautiful games. And that was the thing, is that I didn't know what it was going to be like. I open up the app and I see our game alongside all these like amazing creative games. And it's like instantly I felt like, wow, we're amongst really great company. And it just felt like we're part of this really cool club. And I just want that to keep expanding and more cool games to get let in.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else from Cappy you want to plug? And Nathan Vela recently left. It's not something worth plugging, but how are things going up there?
Why did you bring that up?
I'm sorry.
No, we desperately miss Nathan already. Last week was his last day. There were lots of tears, but he's going on to something really cool. We're really excited, and we're still going to be working with him and seeing him, but plug, I mean, Sam Webster, that's the composer of the soundtrack. He's going to be putting that up soon, so you can get that. And I just got my brand new, still smells like the factory below vinyl of Jim Guthrie's soundtrack.
Ooh.
I believe it's 3 LPs. It's this huge gatefold. It's like gorgeous. Anyway, that's coming out really soon. So.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show podcast. Be sure to tune in next Thursday. We'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.